I watched my world crumble in a cold, sterile hospital room. The woman I vowed to protect was slipping away right in front of me. Every breath she took was a countdown, each cough a haunting reminder that I had failed her. I was supposed to keep her safe, but there she was, fighting a battle that wasn't hers to lose. I held her hand, promising her the world while the doctors stripped away our future with every failed diagnosis. And when she took her last breath, I died with her. Now, all that's left is the rage, the guilt, and the hollow silence that echoes through the empty halls of our home. I could feel my daughter's warm breath on my face. Even with my eyes closed, still waking up, I knew we were very close. I slowly opened one eye and saw her familiar face. She had light reddish-brown hair, big green eyes, and a small nose. I quickly closed my eye again, hoping she hadn't noticed me, but I was wrong. "Daddy, I know you're awake. I'm hungry," my daughter, Tina Marie, said as she lay beside me on my pillow. She had a funny habit of coming into my bed in the morning and watching me until I woke up. It had surprised me more than once. Do you know what it's like to wake up and see someone staring at you? The first time I nearly jumped out of bed. Now it was just something I kind of expected. I wasn't too fond of it, but what could I say? "Please stop doing that," as if she would listen. "I'm still asleep," I said in a soft, sleepy voice. "Wake me in an hour and then we can have breakfast." "Daddy, you've got to get up," she said, now kneeling on the bed and gently nudging me. "You promised to take me shopping today, remember?" She emphasized the word remember. I thought Grandma was doing that. "She only got me some basic things. She said it's about time you taught me how to pick clothes. Daddy, please get up." "Thanks, Mom," I whispered to myself as my daughter kept trying to wake me. With another gentle push, I slipped my arm under her and rolled her onto her back. "Looks like someone needs a tickle," I joked, lightly tickling her sides. "Oh no, not that," I said, pretending to grab her sides. Tina burst into laughter, trying to escape my playful moves. A long time ago, my dad and I used to watch wrestling on TV. There were two famous wrestlers. One used a move called the stomach claw, and the other had something called the Vulcan death grip. Both moves looked similar. The wrestler would grab his opponent and gently bring him down, pretending to cause trouble. The announcer would make it sound exciting. "Oh no, not the stomach claw!" the announcer would shout, while the camera zoomed in on the wrestler's focused face. His opponent would act like he was in great distress, slapping the mat to show he needed help. Then the wrestler would let him go, stand up proudly, and the referee would raise his hand in victory. It seemed so silly, but my dad and I really enjoyed it. We would wrestle around on the living room floor, and he would grab me and say, "Oh no, not the stomach claw." Then he would tickle me until I couldn't stop laughing. My mom would try to end the fun, but it never really worked. "You two are going to break something, and I'll be very upset," she would say, giving us a serious look. Did it stop us? Not at all. My dad would usually chase after her while she kept warning him, so he'd tickle her instead. They always seemed to come back together, sharing hugs and laughter. They really cared for each other. My dad served in the Navy. Even though we lived in the Midwest, he joined the Navy 5 years after getting married. He was away a lot, working as a mechanic on a ship he referred to as his tin can. In the beginning, my mom traveled with him from base to base, but after 12 years, she decided to settle down in a small house in Minneapolis near her parents. She wanted a place to call home after moving so much. My dad was often away, but when he came home, it felt like a big celebration. It wasn't the life I would choose, but they made it work. I had a sister, Jenny, who was 10 years older than me, and a brother, Tommy, who was just over 8 years older. I guess you could say I was a surprise. They thought they were done having kids, but when my dad came home on leave, I came along. It caught them both off guard since they had given away all their baby things years before. After I was born, my dad returned home as much as he could. After his next 4-year term, he kept his promise to my mom and decided to retire after nearly 25 years. He found a job as a large engine mechanic, and life at home for the next 10 years was pretty normal. Jenny finished school, went to college for a couple of years, and then married a doctor. Tommy wasn't much for school, but found a good job at a box plant. He was doing well and eventually married his high school sweetheart. As for me, at 16, things were going great. I made the varsity football team as a sophomore, had a nice girlfriend, and plenty of friends. Life was good. Then everything changed. "We are moving to Florida," my dad announced during a Sunday dinner with the family. Sadly, our family was missing my grandparents, as my mother's parents had both passed away a few years ago. "What?" everyone said in surprise. "I got a good job offer at the Naval Shipyard in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm tired of the snow and cold winters here." "I want to be warm for a change," he explained. "Who wouldn't want to move to Florida if they had the chance?" "Not me," I said right away. I shared all the reasons I wanted to stay, even asking my mom if I could live with Tommy and his wife until I finished high school. But it didn't change Dad's mind. "Steve, it's not the end of the world. Think about it. Sun, sand, and the beach. It doesn't get better than that," Dad said, hoping to convince me it was a good idea. I didn't like it, but in the end, I had no choice. Moving was a big change for me. Jacksonville was nothing like Minneapolis. Even though it wasn't all bad, I really missed my friends from my old home. The beach was nice, but the kids here weren't quite as friendly. The beach felt different from what I was used to. Adjusting to Florida was hard, but I managed. When they said I talked differently, I thought, I talked differently? It felt like stepping into another world. When I made the football team in my junior year, it changed everything. Football was a big deal here. I learned just how serious rivalries could be when the Georgia Bulldogs played the Florida Gators in Jacksonville. They even changed the school schedule so we could go to the rally downtown. They loved their football in the South. Even within Florida, there were fierce rivalries. The Miami Hurricanes, Florida Gators, and Florida State Seminoles were all top teams, and when they played each other, the excitement was huge. In my senior year, I got a nice surprise. My brother and his family moved down to be with us. Dad helped him find a job at a nearby paper plant. He wasn't making as much money, but the lower living costs and no state income tax helped a lot. We were almost a family again. Then, a twisted knee in my senior year ended my football days. Luckily, my grades were good enough for me to go to any college I wanted. I chose the University of Florida. I was a Gator now. I enjoyed college life. But Dad reminded me, "You're there for a reason, and I'm not spending money for you to party." That was the speech I got when I came home. Let's just say I made him proud and leave it at that. I dated on and off during college. In my senior year, I grew close to a girl named Connie. I thought it might get serious until she took a job in New York, which changed things for me. I dated a little, got a job with a big insurance company back home in Jacksonville, and life went on. Family, work, football, and light dating filled my days and nights. I bought a small condo in a part of Jacksonville called Arlington. It was just a few miles from the beach. I had the small apartment I always thought I wanted. When my brother Tommy's youngest daughter, Christy, was in a school play during her holiday, we all knew we would be there on opening night. Still, on a Friday evening, it wasn't exactly where I wanted to be. My mom said the play was sweet. I thought it was 2 hours I would never get back. After the show, we all went backstage to see Christy, and that's when I met her teacher, Lana Jean Collins. A lot of kids were trying to get her attention, and she was doing her best to help them all. Christy came running out of the dressing room. "Dad, didn't I do great?" She was smiling. "Come over here, you've got to meet my teacher," she said, pulling my brother toward Lana. "Miss Collins, this is my dad." She reached out her hand, saying it was nice to meet him and complimenting how talented Christy was. Christy then introduced Miss Collins to the rest of our family. When it was my turn, I shook her hand and felt a bit taken by her. "Steve, you can give her hand back whenever you want," my brother teased. That's when I realized I was still holding on to her hand. Embarrassed, I quickly apologized and let go. "That's okay," she smiled. "But since I write with my right hand, I might keep it for a little longer." We all praised her for the wonderful play and said we hoped to see it again over the weekend. "She's pretty nice, isn't she?" my brother said as we walked to the parking lot. "And I hear she's single. I'm guessing you noticed she wasn't wearing a ring, considering you couldn't stop looking at her." "She's fine, I guess," I replied casually. My easy answer didn't fool anyone. My mom laughed, nudging my dad and reminding him he had said the same thing before. To me, she was more than just fine. Her strawberry blonde hair shone under the stage lights, and her deep green eyes had me completely captivated. I didn't really get to learn more about her at that moment, but I planned to when I saw her again. I went to the play again on Saturday night and then for the Sunday matinee. After each show, I checked backstage with Tommy to pick up Christy, hoping for another chance to see Lana. "Steve, you must really enjoy the play," she said, her southern accent making her voice sound lovely. She truly had the charm of the South, proudly from Alabama. On Sunday, I decided to ask her a question. Christy came out of the dressing room just as I started talking with Lana. I quickly asked her if she had any plans for that night. "The only thing I want to do tonight is relax, soak in a warm bath, and unwind after this long weekend." "Why don't you ask me again when things are quieter?" I wasn't sure if she was just busy or if she didn't want to meet, but I got the feeling tonight wasn't the right time. 3 weeks later, I decided to try again. I thought after the holidays, things might be calmer. I found her number and called. "Lana, this is Steve Moore. We met at the holiday play. I'm Christy Moore's uncle." There was a little pause. Then she said, "I remember you. You came to all 3 shows, and if I remember right, you asked me out on Sunday. At least I made an impression." "You did! What can I help you with?" "Well, if you aren't busy this weekend, would you like to go out for dinner or maybe a movie?" I hoped I didn't sound too eager. "That sounds nice. What kind of food do you like?" "Almost anything." I had never really been asked that before. "Why don't you choose the restaurant?" "Are you sure about that?" Now I was a bit worried. How bad could the food be? Food is food, right? Well, not quite. Being from the Midwest, I wasn't familiar with grits at all. I had never heard of it before moving south. The closest I got was cream of wheat, and I was still learning about Southern dishes. In those 3 weeks, I realized 2 things. I really liked Lana, and she loved Southern cooking. I still wondered how she stayed so fit. Lana was just under 5 feet 6 inches and weighed about 120 pounds. She wasn't overly curvy, but I thought she looked great. On our 4th date, we attended a church dance together where we were chaperones. We talked a bit about our faith, her being Southern Baptist and me being Catholic. For me, it wasn't a big deal, but for her, religion was very important. I had stopped going to church years ago, while Lana never missed a service. It didn't take long for me to understand why she was single. She made it clear that she wanted to wait until marriage for physical closeness. There were sweet moments and hugs, but she was firm about her boundaries. I was a bit frustrated, but was trying to be patient. After our 6th date, I brought her home for our Sunday family dinner. Dad was grilling chicken, while Mom and Ruth, Tommy's wife, were in the kitchen making potato salad and baked beans. "Steve, why didn't you tell me everyone was bringing something? I could have made something," Ruth said, looking a little annoyed. "Mrs. Moore, I wouldn't have come empty-handed if I'd known. Let me help you while Steve helps your husband." My mom smiled at me as Ruth went on. "Mrs. Moore, you have a lovely home. Next time, I'll make sure we bring something to share," she said with a knowing look. I felt a bit lost. I decided to step back to the patio. Honestly, I hadn't thought about bringing anything. After dinner, the women chatted and cleaned up, putting away the food. Dad took Tommy and me outside for a cold drink. "Looks like you have an interesting situation," Tommy said with a laugh. "I can't wait to see what she brings next time." "Hey, she's a good cook. A bit too country for me sometimes, but she's been nice," I replied, trying to speak well of her. "Well, your mom really likes her," Dad said as he finished his drink. "Unless you're really serious about this girl, you might want to keep her away from your mother. You know how she gets when she likes someone. I thought she was going to take Connie in when she left for New York. She has a way of caring for people." "Dad, I really like this girl, but she has strong beliefs and is quite traditional." "Traditional?" Dad asked, raising an eyebrow. Before I could answer, Tommy jumped in. "Dad, that means Steve hasn't really changed much in that area, and it doesn't seem like that will change soon." He laughed, but Dad looked serious. "Steve, if you're just looking for something casual, I don't think this is the girl for you. She seems like she wants something more meaningful, if you know what I mean." That's how Lana won her way into my heart, and my mom's, too. After a few arguments with Lana, my mom would often say that if I messed this up, she would never forgive me. "In that case, Mom, why don't you marry her instead of me?" "Don't get smart with me, young man. You're not too old for a good talking to." "Mom, you've never given me a talking to in your life," I said with a grin. "Well, it's not too late to start." I could hear the annoyance in her voice. Once, At a family dinner, both my mother and brother were giving me advice about Lana. Everyone needs to step back and let him make his own mistakes. That's the only way he'll ever learn, Dad said, looking at my mother and brother. Yeah, let me make my own mistakes, I replied, glaring at everyone a bit. Sure, let my little brother mess it up, and then when he falls apart, we have to help him out. I'm not going to mess it up. Well, that was the plan anyway. We dated for almost 8 months before she finally let me have the serious conversation I had been wanting for the last 2. Lana, I love you. I want to plan my future with you. Steve, we barely know each other. I know all I need to know. What's my favorite color, my favorite food, my mother's maiden name? She fired back quickly. Royal blue, stuffed pork chops, and I don't know. But we have plenty of time to learn everything else together. It took me 2 months, along with some help from my mom, to convince her that I was serious and truly in love with her. I thought of all the fun ways to pop the question. Hiding the ring in lots of boxes, putting it in her drink, or setting it on her dessert at a nice restaurant. None of those felt right, so I just asked her directly, ring in hand, at our favorite Mexican place. When she said she needed time to think, I felt heartbroken. That night, I walked her to her parents' door, got a lovely good night, then turned and slowly walked to my car, trying to figure out what to do next. Before I even got far, I heard Lana call out, "I've thought it over, and yes, I'll marry you." It took just a few quick steps to reach her, and I hugged her tightly, feeling like the happiest person alive. Just because I've said yes, don't think about what you might be imagining, Mr. Stephen Moore. I want our future to be as lovely and respectful as we've always dreamed. I understood and looked forward to everything ahead. Planning a wedding isn't quick, especially with Lana, her mom, and my mom involved. There seemed to be a million details to figure out, including our honeymoon. Steve, just nod yes when they ask you something, and we'll get through this smoothly, my dad advised. If she asks if you have any doubts, say no, even if you do. And remember, from the moment you say I do, she'll always be right, so get used to that. I started to say something, but he interrupted me. After over 50 years of being married, I must have done something right, so just trust me. Your days of being right are over. He smiled, and I started to feel nervous. The wedding took place in a rose garden by a lake, not far from her parents' house. We exchanged our vows in a gazebo filled with flowers. Her uncle, who was a Baptist minister, married us and made us write our own vows. Say what's truly in your heart. Don't just say what you think she or we want to hear. It all turned out perfect. My dad shook my hand. My mom hugged me. My sister told me to take it easy that night, and my brother playfully punched me in the arm, saying I finally did something right. Mess this up, and you'll have me to deal with, he warned as Lana and I got into our car to leave. I decided to keep our honeymoon destination a secret from my new wife. The only thing I told her was to expect warm weather and to pack a lot of casual clothes. I had saved up enough money for what I wanted to do, spend an entire week alone with her. The resort was on the far west side of Cabo, a small island in the tropics. And when I say small, I mean it was only 3 miles long. It had 8 huts on each side, placed so we couldn't see any of the other huts from our deck. How did you find this place? She asked. I found it online. If you know what you're looking for, you can find anything. I typed in romantic, isolated Caribbean getaways, and this place came up along with 20 others. I picked this spot after narrowing down my choices, I explained, looking at the ocean while holding my new bride's hand. Well, Mr. Moore, you did a great job. She wrapped her arms around me and smiled. Now, if you don't mind, I'm a little tired. I think I'll head to bed. I was surprised as I watched her walk into our hut alone. She turned around with a smile. Well, husband, are you going to stand there all night? After all, this is our wedding night, or maybe the morning after, she added, glancing at her watch. I wish I could say it was a perfect moment, but it wasn't. Not knowing what to expect, I followed my sister's advice and took it slowly, maybe too slowly. After a cozy evening together, my bride hugged me and asked, "Was it what you thought it would be?" Sweetheart, sharing this special time with you was something I've never had before. That's good, right? She asked, sitting up. Not just good, but great. Steve, I know I'm not as experienced, but I'm excited to learn what you enjoy and to share everything I've dreamed about. I may be new to this, but I'm a quick learner, she smiled. Jumping off the bed, she returned with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. She poured some into each glass and handed me one. To us, may our love grow, she said, taking a sip and giggling as the bubbles tickled her nose. I'm so glad we don't have to go anywhere. Tonight I want to enjoy this bottle and spend the night together until we're both tired. And that's exactly what we did. For 7 days we enjoyed one another's company, taking walks on the beach and appreciating our time together. My sister had sent a thoughtful gift that added to our fun. Life was everything I hoped for. She finished work at 3:30 each day and always greeted me with a warm hug and a cheerful question about my day. No matter how tough my day had been, being in Lana's arms made everything feel better. Almost 2 years after we got married, Lana surprised me one evening when I got home. She looked beautiful and held a bottle of sparkling juice. After pouring 2 glasses, she gave me a sweet kiss that felt magical. This will be my last glass for a while, she said, finishing hers quickly. So if you want to enjoy this moment, you better hurry because things might change soon. I looked at her, puzzled. Earth to Steve, she said with a grin. Think about it. What happens when a surprise comes along? Oh my God, you don't mean... I see you understand now. Our family is about to grow, she beamed, and I followed her into our cozy home, filled with excitement and joy. At least we wouldn't need to worry about planning for a little while. My mom was understandably upset, just as I had expected. My dad simply said that life was about to change a lot. Tina Marie weighed 7 pounds 3 ounces and had a full head of light brown hair. After a long wait, I was so relieved when she finally arrived. I was there the whole time and even had the chance to cut the umbilical cord. I was tired, and Lana looked worn out. Tina was the most beautiful baby girl in the world, and that's what I told everyone. Luckily, Tina started sleeping through the night after her first month. I thought maybe this wouldn't be too hard until my dad gave me some advice. Steve, a baby changes everything, so you need to adjust. Your days of doing whatever you want, whenever you want, are now officially over. With a little one, you'll have to plan for every outing. I told my dad that not much would change. He laughed. He was right. I wasn't being honest with myself. Life became more complicated. Even visiting my parents felt like a big trip. We had to pack food, diapers, and extra clothes, and that was just the start. We kept a bag ready with everything we might need for quick outings. Things got easier when Tina turned 5. Even when it was tough, I wouldn't trade it for anything. For a while, money was tight, but with raises over the years, life was good for the 3 of us. Our schedule revolved around the school calendar, and even though Lana had summers off, it wasn't as easy as it might seem. People who think teachers have it made should think about what their year is really like. Lana worked 1 week after the kids left for summer break and came back a week before school started in the fall, as her contract stated. But she spent many extra days getting ready for the new school year. Contrary to what many believe, teachers do not get a paid 3-month vacation in the summer. Their break is actually shorter than 2 months. Many professionals get more time off than teachers. Teachers earn a yearly salary based on the days they work, and they get paid monthly. This means their last paycheck comes a few weeks after school ends, and they don't receive another paycheck until a few weeks into the new school year. My wife, Lana, and I often felt the stress of those small paychecks. Then our lives changed unexpectedly. I remember it clearly. It was April, and we were getting close to our 8th anniversary. Lana caught a cold that just wouldn't go away. It started like a normal cold, but turned into something worse. She went to see her doctor, someone she had trusted since she was a child after moving to Florida. He was a general doctor in a clinic with 2 other doctors. It felt like he remembered old stories more than he focused on treating her during her first visit. He gave her some medicine to help her cough and told her to rest for a week. After a couple of weeks without improvement, I started to worry. "Hun, you should see the doctor again," I told her. "Steve, it's just a summer cold. I've had them before. If it doesn't get better soon, I'll go back. It only bothers me at night when I'm trying to sleep." She finally started to improve after some weeks, but she still had a dry cough that wouldn't go away. After I convinced her, she went back to Dr. James, who prescribed some stronger cough medicine that helped. She felt a bit better, but still seemed tired. I later learned she had experienced some body aches, too. That summer, we had a great vacation. A good friend had a condo on the beach with a speedboat. He gave me a good deal to use it. We enjoyed the ocean during the day, and most afternoons I took Lana and our 5-year-old daughter out for rides. Lana often said I was going too fast, while our daughter cheered for more speed. We made breakfast and lunch in the condo, but made it a point to eat out for dinner. There were plenty of restaurants nearby that were reasonably priced and not busy at that time of year. One night, while enjoying the view from the balcony, Lana said, "We should buy a place on the beach. We could rent it out to others during tourist season and use it ourselves the rest of the time. Then when we retire, it could be our home since it will be paid off." It was a nice thought, and I told her to look into it. "Do you really mean that?" she asked. "Sure, why not? But you might find that it's a bit out of our current budget." "Well, it doesn't have to be fancy. We really need a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom place with a kitchen and a living room. You can look at what's available and I'll take care of the numbers, but there's something else I want to talk about," I said. "What do you mean?" she asked, looking at me with a curious smile. "I have an idea, and I know you're the perfect person to help me with it." "Are you trying to distract me?" Lana teased. "I think I already have. I just want to see what you've learned." Lana always said she could pick things up quickly. I felt so grateful. I had an amazing partner, a daughter who filled my heart with happiness, and a life that many people would wish for. In 3 words, I was lucky. When Lana's bad cough came back, Dr. James wasn't around, so another doctor at the clinic took care of her. He gave her more cough medicine and some antibiotics he called a Z-Pack, saying this would clear up her illness. The treatment lasted nearly 3 months, and for a week she had to sleep sitting up. "That's enough," I told her one Monday morning when school was closed. "We're going to the doctor to fix this for good." While my daughter stayed with my mom, we headed back to the clinic. Mondays are often busy for doctors, especially when you don't have an appointment and there's no school. After 2 hours, we were shown to an examination room where we waited another half hour before the 3rd doctor arrived. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked. "She's had this cough on and off for the last 5.5 months. The medicine helped a bit, but it came back as soon as she stopped taking it." He looked at me and then at Lana. "Why don't you sit here?" he said, pointing to the examination table. "And let's listen to your chest." He checked her breathing and asked her to cough for him. After looking at her file again, he said, "There might be a sign of a respiratory infection, but I can't be sure without more tests. To be safe, I think we should get a couple of chest x-rays." I felt some relief. They were finally checking her condition instead of just giving her medicine. "Talk to the receptionist, and she will arrange the x-rays." "You don't do them here?" I asked. "Not anymore. The x-ray center is just across the street. Usually you can walk in. It might be a good idea to have my receptionist call for an appointment just in case." We weren't leaving until she had the x-ray done. An hour and a half later, we went to Walgreens to pick up 2 more prescriptions. By the time we got home, it was 4:30. We had spent the whole day going from one clinic to another, hoping to figure out what was wrong. The next week brought more tests: x-rays, a mammogram, an ultrasound, and an MRI of her upper body. Still, we didn't know much more than we had 2 weeks before. When the doctor wanted to set up a meeting with a specialist to discuss her test results, I lost my patience. "We're not doing any more tests or seeing another doctor until you tell us what's going on. Do you understand?" I didn't want to be difficult. I was just tired of not knowing. "Mr. Moore, we want to be absolutely sure before we tell you anything," the doctor said calmly. "There are 2 different masses found in your wife's mammogram, which were confirmed with the ultrasound. An x-ray also showed another mass in her lower right lung. We wanted to wait for all the results before giving you any information. However, the only way to be completely sure is to do biopsies to confirm our findings. We need to discuss this with the radiologist who will perform them." Dr. Patro met with us at 10:15 on Wednesday morning. He reviewed all the tests and agreed that we should proceed with the procedures. They would conduct the biopsies on both her breasts and her lung that day, and right after the lung biopsy, she would have another x-ray of her right lung. "Mr. and Mrs. Moore, it's a simple procedure. We will take small samples from each mass in the breasts and lung and send them to the lab for analysis. The whole procedure will take about an hour and a half since we're doing everything at once," After the biopsy, she will need a lung x-ray to make sure we targeted the right place. We should have all the results back in 5 days. Can you do it today? I asked, almost in disbelief. Not today, but definitely this week. For the next 2 days, we both felt anxious. I tried to stay positive and be strong for my wife, but it was hard. Honey, it's probably nothing. One could just be a cyst, and the other might be something from your pneumonia. What if it's something serious? I could hear her worry. No one has said anything serious. But Steve, what if it is serious? Well, we'll deal with it when we get the results. It took most of the morning to finish the biopsies and the x-ray. I wanted to be in the room with her for support, but they said it would be too busy with medical staff. So I waited in the waiting area, hoping for good news. She came out after the biopsy with a bag of frozen peas. How did it go? Did it hurt? I felt a little pressure, that's all. They took several samples from each spot, and we should know in a few days. I was allowed to go with her to the x-ray room, but had to wait outside again. Neither of us wanted to face the situation, especially with the medical team around. Even though I felt hopeful, I couldn't stop thinking about what we would do if the tests showed something wrong. After 2 days, I was anxious, and so was Lana. She walked back and forth at home, and I couldn't imagine how she was coping at school. Why can't they just tell us the results over the phone? Why do we have to go to their office? This doesn't sound good, my wife said, her voice quivering. They said the doctor wants to discuss the results with us. That doesn't mean it's bad news, it's just how they do things. But deep down, I was worried and wished to be wrong. 5 minutes after the doctor joined us in his office, there was a lot of crying. He patiently waited for my wife to calm down. He had probably seen this many times before. Mrs. Moore, the results are concerning, but they are treatable, he said, which made her cry even more. It took him about 10 minutes to continue. She had 2 types of cancer, one in her breast and another more serious one in her lung. We couldn't know exactly how long they had been developing, but it had been some time. We talked about surgery, recovery, and the treatment that would follow. We will act quickly against the cancer, and we will get through this, he said, and I felt some relief from his positivity. Someone had to stay hopeful. We scheduled an appointment with the surgeon for the next Friday. Other appointments would be set a couple of weeks after the surgery. The only thing left was to tell our daughter. Tina understood as much as a 5-year-old could. We tried to soften the seriousness of Lana's condition, avoiding any harsh details, but we didn't pretend it was nothing. She had questions, mostly about what would happen next and how she could help. This was now something our family was facing together. That night, I held my wife close as she let her feelings out. I offered all the comfort I could. There was nothing I could say that would change this. I just needed to show her I would always support her. Her tears soaked my shirt while I fought back my own, trying to be strong. The woman in my arms was my whole life. I wanted to take her away from this reality, but I knew that was not possible. We had to face this head-on and overcome it together. There was no other option. So after 5 long days, in the quiet of our bedroom, we found comfort in each other, as we always had. "Will you still think I'm beautiful after everything?" she asked softly. I assured her that she meant the world to me. She smiled, but I could tell it was forced. Neither of us slept well in the following days. Every now and then I would wake up and see my wife lying there, awake and looking up at the ceiling. I would reach out, rub her arm, and say soothing words. There were no smiles at 3 o'clock in the morning. On Wednesday, we went for her checkup before the surgery. Looking at her, I could tell she was still in denial. I wished I could be too. The doctors explained what the surgery would involve and how long it would take. It was set for 7 o'clock on Friday morning. We left with a list of things to do and not to do for the next day. I knew she didn't sleep well on Thursday night. We stayed up talking until after midnight. She cried, and I tried my best to reassure her that everything would be okay. On Friday, I said goodbye as she walked down the hall with a nurse. I was taken to the waiting room and told the doctor would come and talk to me after the surgery, which was supposed to take about 3 hours. After 3.5 hours, I started to worry about how long it was taking. Just after 4 hours, Dr. Reynolds finally came in. He shook my hand and asked me to sit down. "There was more than we expected," he began. "The situation had spread, so we had to remove a lot more than planned. We took out part of her lung, but we believe we got everything. She will be in pain for a few weeks, but I am confident she will recover fully." I was in shock. He said I could see her after recovery, which should take about an hour and a half. She was quite out of it for the rest of the day and night, so I just sat by her side and held her hand. I felt sad because I couldn't help her. Our life was going to change a lot, but I knew we would face it together. We were a team. At 2 in the morning, I felt her move. The nurses had come in to check on her almost every hour, and she either slept through it all or wasn't fully awake. "How are you feeling?" I asked, wishing I had said something deeper. "I love you," I added. She smiled weakly and licked her dry lips. I poured her a glass of water and helped her sip a little through a straw. She was still groggy from the anesthesia. I told her to rest. We could talk later. She looked at the wires and tubes connected to her, shook her head, and slowly drifted back to sleep. I asked everyone to wait until at least Sunday to visit. She needed to rest, and there would be plenty of time for visits later. I managed to bring Tina in on Saturday night, and we had a little family gathering with the door closed. Seeing her mom was okay helped Tina a lot. Everyone felt sorry, me, Tina, and everyone else, except for the doctors who had let us down since the very beginning. Every time I heard someone say, "Doctors are human and make mistakes too," I could feel my patience fading. Taking Lana to her appointments was hard for me. I saw her struggle and felt her pain. Life was tough for all of us. When Lana lost all her hair, Tina suggested that we should both shave our heads to support her. We were about to go through with it when Lana stopped us. She said it was hard enough for her to be bald, and she would feel sad if we did it too. So instead, we decided to buy matching hats. After her third treatment, the test results came back with good news, which lifted our spirits. Instead of going out, I brought home Chinese food, and the three of us celebrated together. We felt like we had beaten a big hurdle and hoped life could get back to normal. While Lana had been working part-time, sometimes it was too much for her. But after getting the good news, she seemed to regain her strength. 4 months later, she was back to teaching full-time and even talked about the possibility of having surgery. I told her I would support her whenever she was ready. Her health was my main concern. People said she was an inspiration for breast cancer survivors. Despite facing different types of cancer, she proved everyone wrong. Her cancer was now in remission. When her test results came back clear 6 months later, she started to bring up the idea of getting a condo by the beach. We had dealt with a lot of medical bills, even with insurance. But the more she mentioned the condo, the more I wanted to make her dream come true. We didn't look for timeshares. We knew that being even a block away from the beach made a big difference in price. My brother found a property that was going into foreclosure. At first glance, I thought it needed a lot of work and was still too expensive. Then my dad called for a family meeting. "It's a fixer-upper and probably costs too much, but with some effort, it could be a great buy. I've already spoken with Jenny and David, and they said they would invest 25% if we decide to go for it. It could be our own beach house, and we could even build a deck to enjoy the ocean view." The look on Lana's face said everything. After all she had gone through, I couldn't say no. We opened a bottle of wine, and Tommy and I let Dad handle the talks with the owner. Thank goodness we did. It wasn't easy with the owner at first, but he agreed to a lower price. After some hard work and getting second mortgages on our homes, we became proud owners of our new place. "We'll focus on the most important repairs for now," my dad said as we stared at the long list of things that needed fixing. We had taken on a big job, and sometimes during the next year and a half, I wished we hadn't. I was tired of saving money and wanted to treat ourselves sometimes. "Steve, we can't go out tonight. We need to save that money for the new hardwood floors coming next week." My wife was strict about money. One day I sold a few of my childhood treasures and used the money to buy her a new dress and take her out for dinner, even though I felt a bit guilty. "Steve, you're spending money that could be better used for something else." "I know, but I just had to do this." That night we felt closer to each other. The first night we actually stayed at our beach house was amazing. We packed a picnic lunch and ate on the new roof deck. While using her binoculars, Tina thought she saw dolphins. I wasn't so sure. After Tina went to bed, we enjoyed our new space together. We had running water and air mattresses, but not much else. It didn't matter. We were happy. A week later, after church, I took my 2 favorite girls out for brunch. The Sea Turtle Hotel was right by the beach, and the restaurant had a wall of windows looking out at the ocean. We got a table next to the windows and started our buffet meal. "With prices like these, eat as much as you want, and we can take what's left for Mom," I told my daughter as we went through the line. 45 minutes later, I was full and content. "Look, Dad, dolphins!" Tina exclaimed excitedly. There they were, 2 dolphins swimming near the shore, and then we noticed a swimmer out about 35 yards from the beach. He spotted the dolphins and misjudged what they were. He started paddling back to shore, looking anxious. He wasn't a very strong swimmer, and the splashing he made caught a lot of people's attention as the dolphins got closer. Everyone could see what he was thinking, and soon enough, an exhausted man flopped down on the sand. "Do you think we should tell him?" a man at the table next to us asked. "No, let him believe he just escaped danger. He'll have a great story to share. Why spoil it?" Everyone returned to their meals, but I knew he must be feeling lucky in that moment. At the 2-year mark, we were nearing the finish line on our beach house projects. When we first bought the fourplex, we chose our units randomly to decide which would be our getaway. Lana and I got the top left unit above my parents. Tommy got the unit next door, and my sister ended up with the last one. We opened a bottle of champagne to celebrate our good fortune. Luck is a funny thing because it can be good or bad. There's good luck, and then there's the kind that never seems to leave us in peace. Just before her 3rd annual visit with her doctor, Lana had lost a little weight and often said she wasn't feeling very hungry. She sometimes felt tired, but we thought it was just because she wasn't eating well and was busy at our beach house or at her school. She had been healthy for 3 years, and while we never fully forgot about her past, it was starting to feel more distant. The week before her doctor appointment, she had a full-body scan, called a PET scan, just to make sure everything was fine. Her doctor was supposed to talk about the scan results during her appointment. She didn't call me at work like she usually did after her appointments. I thought of these yearly checkups as mere formalities, something her careful doctor required, like the PET scan. I was getting ready to head into a staff meeting when the receptionist told me there was a call for me on line 1. "Connie, take a message for me, please." "Steve, it's your mother-in-law. Okay, please pass her call to my desk. Let the team know I'll join them shortly." "Hi, Helen, how are you and Rob?" "Steve, you need to come home right now." "Helen, I'm just about to go into a meeting. Tell Lana I'll be home around 4:30. "Steve, you have to leave now." She sounded more serious than usual, which was unusual for her. "Helen," I managed to say when she shared the shocking news. "Steve, can you please listen for a moment? Lana's health has changed." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After a quick chat with my boss, I rushed out the door. Thankfully, my car seemed to know the way home, while my mind raced with the heavy news I had just received. Just 3 seconds after stepping inside, I found my wife in tears, and I held her tight, trying to understand her words through her sobs. One phrase made me start to cry too. We held each other for a long time before moving to the couch. Lana was still having trouble expressing herself, so I tried to be strong and comfort her. "It can't be true. You've been well all this time. It's got to be a mistake, that's all." "But what if it's not?" she said, wiping her tears. "Then we'll face it together, just like always." I could see the sadness in her eyes, and it broke my heart. "Steve, I'm not sure I can handle this again." "Lana, I don't want to hear that. Do you really think I would let anything happen to you? I promise we are going to enjoy our beach house this year and for many years ahead. You have my word." She smiled at me, but it was the last smile I would see for a long time. Everyone had their own ideas about why the illness might have returned. In the end, the reasons didn't matter. I just needed to know what we could do. A biopsy revealed our worst worries. Lana had lymphoma, and she needed surgery again. All her friends from elementary school sent cards and stuffed animals to cheer her on. Unfortunately, this time, she didn't make it back. I laid my wife to rest in a small, quiet cemetery near her favorite beach. Before she passed, she fought bravely, and we all did too. We sold our condo in town and moved to the beach house full-time. Looking out at the water brought her some comfort when nothing else could. My mom told me I was strong for my wife and daughter, but inside, I felt just as broken. Lana lost weight despite our efforts, and the treatments took a heavy toll on her. Tina and I even shaved our heads to support her, and for a brief moment it made her smile, but sadly it was too little, too late for all of us. I expressed my frustration and urged anyone who would listen that we needed another option. I asked her doctors, "Isn't there a new treatment we could try?" I wouldn't give up, even when they seemed resigned. I held off on hospice help until the very end. When they came, it felt like the final hope was gone, and I struggled to accept letting her go just yet. I created a cozy spot for us on the roof deck, and every night I would carry Lana up the stairs so we could watch the sunset together. I often prayed for a way to wake up from this nightmare, but my prayers went unanswered. One day, while walking on the beach with my dad, he said it was time. "Steve, you need to think about letting her go, for her sake and for Tina. Hospice can help make sure her remaining time is peaceful and without pain." I knew he was right, but this was my wife we were talking about. How could I let her go? I was in denial. This shouldn't be happening to her, to us. I pleaded, I bargained, and I expressed my frustrations. I told myself I would do anything if only she could be well again. In my anger, I questioned how the God Lana believed in could allow such a cruel fate to come to someone as wonderful as her. My mother said I was going through grief. I told her I didn't care what it was called. I just wanted my wife to be whole again. Despite everything, Lana held on to her faith, saying it gave her some comfort and peace. I was thankful for her strength even while I felt lost. Her last days were both calm and heartbreaking. I was relieved that she was at peace without pain, while I was suffering deeply. During those last 2 days, I didn't sleep. I wanted to soak up every moment with her. "Steve, I'm scared," Lana said during one of her few clear moments, looking up at me from her bed. "I'm leaving the 2 most important things in my life." Her voice was soft and shaky. "I know you will be strong, especially for our daughter. You need to be both parents now." I held her fragile hands. "And you have to promise me that every night before she falls asleep, you will kiss her for me. Tell her she was the most special part of my life and that I will always be watching over her." A single tear rolled down her cheek, even though she was too weak to cry. I loved her more than words could say. Around 3:30 in the morning, with me sitting by her bed and Tina asleep in a chair nearby, Lana took her last breath. We were looking into each other's eyes when a gentle smile appeared on her face, and she closed her eyes. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming emptiness. For the next hour, I just sat there. When I woke our daughter, I told her that Mommy had passed away. We cried together, holding on to each other as we looked at the woman who had been our wife and mother. I'm not sure how the nurse knew that Lana was gone. Maybe it was the quietness or the sound of our tears falling. She came in, checked for a pulse, and took over. The funeral was meant to be small and simple, but I was surprised by how many people showed up. Her students, fellow teachers, and friends from her church. So many people loved her. I planned to say a few words, but my father ended up finishing for me. At the gravesite, it was just family and the minister. We placed flowers on the coffin and gently scattered some dirt as it was lowered. Half an hour later, we gathered at my parents' home for food. Everyone offered their sympathy, but I felt overwhelmed when people said at least I had my daughter. My dad took me outside to the back deck and handed me a drink and a chair. "I thought you might need some fresh air." He was right. You might not believe me when I say it will get easier each day, but it will. We will do everything we can to help with Tina, but she needs you more than anyone else. Tell her you love her and that you will always be here for her. And when you wake up and feel like you can't go on, remember you're doing this for Lana, too. My dad, who I always saw as strong, opened his heart to help me through the next few months. Now I found comfort in smells. For the first month, I didn't touch her side of the bed. Each night I would sleep on what used to be her side. With her pillow over my face, I would breathe in her scent and pretend she was still with me. Sometimes I even dreamed about her. We had shared a big walk-in closet, so even my clothes held traces of her essence. I felt sad when my mom came in one day and washed all my bed linens. I lost another part of her. In some ways, it became easier. I no longer felt the need to stay in bed and miss my wife. Tina went back to school, and when she made the honor roll, she said she did it for her mom. My family helped me with what I couldn't manage, but after 9 months, they stopped giving me any more space. My brother told me to move on with my life, but I wasn't ready. I just felt sorry for myself, which made me and everyone around me unhappy. One thing I did was hire the law firm of Collins and Hathaway to look into those who had cared for my wife. I wasn't interested in money. I just wanted them to remember her name before they dismissed patients without care. I had promised Lana I wouldn't take action against her doctors, but now I wanted to stand up for her. When my boss asked if I was growing a beard, I said not really. He told me that unless I came to work looking responsible, I shouldn't bother coming in. I didn't hire someone to waste time because if I had, I would pay them a lot less than you're making. That was my first wake-up call. The next one wasn't so nice. One day, as I sat around feeling sorry for myself, my dad came to talk to me and gave me a firm message. It's going to be messy if you keep this up. I'd rather clean the backyard than deal with a messy kitchen or living room. I just stared at him, confused. I'm not going to hurt myself. I handed him back his item. Now that we've sorted that out, we need to find a way to lift your spirits so you can join the world again. My dad was right. I needed something to help me feel alive again. I let out a big shout during my first and last tandem parachute jump. The only reason I felt okay was that I didn't have anything in my stomach. Thank goodness. The Mustang Cobra was fast, but it had a rough ride like a race car. Who would want to drive that every day? The 3 Corvettes I tried were even faster, had better gas mileage, but didn't give me the thrill I wanted. I was taking it one step at a time, all while caring for my daughter. Both sets of grandparents were incredibly supportive, but they could be a bit too much for Tina. The more they helped her, the more she wanted to be with me. After losing Lana, I became a parent out of necessity. Now, as I started to reconnect with life, I wanted to be both the mother and father she needed. Shopping for clothes with an almost 9-year-old girl was a new adventure for me. Don't get me wrong, I had shopped with my wife and daughter before, and I was there physically but mentally. That was another story. Usually, they did the shopping while I stood by, pretending to be interested. To me, everything looked nice on them. Now Tina wanted my opinion and needed more than just, "It looks nice." I began to see why many men don't enjoy shopping with their partners. After a full day at the mall, we ended up with only 2 outfits, neither of which I was excited about. But life for us was starting to improve. I guess my dad wasn't completely wrong. 6 months later, 2 big things happened. I came to an agreement with the doctor's insurance company. I wasn't rich, but Tina's education and our immediate future would be okay. I used some money to pay off the mortgage on our beach house and its renovations, while the rest stayed in the bank. The only condition was that I couldn't take any further action against them, and I had to agree that they admitted no fault in her passing. I signed. It was clear that nothing would bring Lana back. That night, I took Tina out to dinner, and on our way home, we each placed a flower on her grave. Alone in my bed, I cried, feeling as though I had regressed in my healing. A week later, I took Tina to a car and motorcycle show downtown. The event was inside, but there were many vendors outside selling all sorts of things. We walked through the aisles, admiring different cars and bikes. Then I saw it. It was a chopper, bright orange with green and red accents. The long front end seemed to stretch out forever. The shiny wheels sparkled so much that I had to squint. It only had 1 seat and looked like it had a back fender. Best of all, it had a "for sale" sign. I looked at it for a long time while Tina stood beside me. I asked a few simple questions and then asked if I could sit on it. "You ride much?" the owner asked. "Nope, not at all." "How does it handle?" "It might take some getting used to because of the long front end, and you'll need to be careful when turning, but other than that, it should feel familiar," he replied. It might have sounded better if I had any riding experience, which I didn't. This was the first motorcycle I had ever sat on. "How much are you asking?" "I've put in $32,000, but I need the money," he laughed. "I don't really have to sell it, but my wife thinks we should think about a house, so all my toys are going." "If you want, we can arrange a test ride after the show today," he said. "I'd like that, but I have a small issue. I've never ridden one before." "You mean a chopper?" "No, I mean a motorcycle." "You're joking, right?" "I wish I was." I said, "I'm interested, but if you have other offers, don't worry about me," still amazed by the motorcycle I was sitting on. "Here," he said, handing me his card. "I might regret this, but I'll hold it for 2 weeks. Go to the Harley-Davidson dealership and sign up for their riding course. You need to finish a safety course before you can get a license anyway. And in your case, that's just what you need. I got off, we shook hands, and I gave him my cell phone number. I took one last look at the motorcycle before walking away. Dad, are you really thinking about getting that? Tina asked, looking up at me. You know Grandpa wouldn't like it, right? What he doesn't know won't hurt him, I replied, my thoughts drifting. Have you ever ridden before? Was the first question they asked me at the Harley dealership. Nope, never. I've just sat on one, so here I am. He marked beginner on my application. The class is all day Saturday and Sunday. Once you pass the written and riding tests, you can get the endorsement for your driver's license. I handed over a check for $250. I also needed a helmet, boots, and gloves. After spending $300 more, I was finally ready. Are you really serious about this? My daughter said, looking at me in surprise. Mom wouldn't have let you buy a motorcycle, and Grandpa thinks they are dangerous, she reminded me. Listen, this is something I need to do right now. I'm not asking you to understand, just trust me. You know I expect a ride before anything happens, or Grandpa finds out and makes you sell it, she said, smiling like her mom, happy to share this secret. I felt a bit clumsy. The book was mostly common sense, and once I realized I was on 2 wheels instead of 4, things began to make sense. But I had never ridden a motorcycle. I hadn't even been on a 2-wheel bike since I was a kid, so it took me a moment to adjust. Clutch on the left, gas and brake on the right, this kept circling in my mind as I took off for the first time on a bike that looked like it had seen better days. They gave us small Ducati bikes, and from the looks of them, they had fallen plenty of times. Over the next 8 hours, I added to that count. I started the bike, gave it some gas, let out the clutch, and stopped after just a few feet. Give it a bit more gas and let the clutch out slowly, I was told. I tried again, gave it more gas, and slowly let out the clutch. The engine roared, and I was moving forward, keeping the engine running this time. I might have strained the clutch, but I was riding. It took some time for me to learn the right balance between gas and clutch, but I got better with practice. The instructor was very patient. He had likely noticed all the mistakes we were making before. Starting, stopping, and turning were all we managed on that first day. I felt exhausted, very stressed, and worried I would be the first to tip over. But I wasn't. I was the second. Still, I felt alive, and every part of me wanted to keep going. On Sunday, I arrived first. I had made breakfast for Tina and dropped her off at Tommy's house again. I didn't want to leave her with my parents. The morning was filled with figure eights, sharp turns, quick stops, and lane changes. I was starting to feel more sure of myself. When it came to doing a figure 8 one way and then reversing it without putting my feet down, I struggled. I took 3 tries, and the instructor told me that if I couldn't get it, I wouldn't pass the riding test. My confidence dropped fast. That afternoon, I missed just 1 question on the written test, but did very well on the riding test. We all felt proud, but our instructor warned us that we needed more practice before we could call ourselves beginner riders. We received our certificates, and half of us decided to celebrate. There were 12 people in our class, and I was surprised that 4 of them were women, with most performing better than the guys in the riding test. At a local hangout, we celebrated our success while talking about the bikes we hoped to own someday. A couple mentioned they were thinking about getting a Harley Ultra. The oldest guy in our class said he had already put a deposit on a trike. When I said I was considering a chopper, some found it interesting while others thought it might not be the best for longer rides. But I was only thinking about it for commuting and fun weekend rides, so I figured I could explore other options for peace of mind. Tommy was a bit disappointed that I was unsure, but I made him promise, like I did with Tina, not to tell anyone my thoughts. The next weekend after Tina and I had lunch, we started searching for the perfect bike. After trying out 2 models, I decided that a sport bike wasn't for me. They felt too intense, like jumping out of a plane without a parachute, which wasn't something I wanted to do again. Next, I rode 4 cruisers, all from Japanese brands. The Honda had all the features I needed, but it didn't give me the thrill I wanted. I found a dealer's phone number from the show and decided to call him. On Tuesday after work, I finally got to ride my first Harley-Davidson motorcycle. It wasn't a standard model, but it was exciting. It was much louder than the Honda and only had the basic parts like a speedometer, tachometer, and turn signals. The dealer mentioned he had a custom windshield for colder mornings and a seat pad for the back. I nearly lost my balance going into my first turn. The front rake was so noticeable that I had to start turning early and slow down quite a bit, but on straight, flat roads, I felt this was the bike I had been looking for. We haggled over the price for 3 days until we agreed on a number that worked for both of us. I felt like I got a good deal because he included all the extra features. For just under $25,000, I had a bike that turned heads, even my own. I thought about wearing a bandana to complete the look, but Tina insisted she would call her grandfather if I rode without a helmet. On Monday, I got to work early, and everyone who arrived after me wanted to know who owned the amazing bike in the parking lot. I stayed quiet, letting them guess for a while. By the time I left work, most people had gone, but a few saw me and smiled, giving me a thumbs up. The next day, the men were curious about my choice, and some of the women started to look at me differently. Did I want attention? Not really, but I didn't want to be ignored either. In the end, I just wanted to enjoy my bike. A trip to the dealership for an oil change turned out to be quite informative. There were so many special parts on the bike that they needed to order a custom oil filter. 1 week later, I waited for 2 hours while they did the oil change and checked the bike thoroughly. "It's in great condition," they said, but warned me that if anything broke, most parts would need to be ordered or specially made. Everyone asked how much I paid and if I thought about joining the local hog chapter. I'll bite. What's a hog chapter? For the next 20 minutes, I learned about the Harley Owners Group and how to join. First, you became a national member, and then you could join a local chapter. One of the salesmen, also a member, shared details about the local chapter. "We have activities most weekends. It's really about hanging out with other riders." I figured it would be more fun to ride with a group. So after some clicks on my computer and for about another $100, I signed up for both the National Hog membership and the local chapter. I had a lot of fun for the first time in a long while, especially since losing Lana. I went on rides most weekends and even started taking Tina with me on shorter lunch rides. She wasn't completely happy, often sitting on that small seat and holding on tight. One Saturday ride was a bit longer than usual. We stopped at the Kickstand Bar and Restaurant just after noon. It was a 65-mile trip that took a couple of hours as we explored the back roads of Florida. While I was enjoying myself, Tina wasn't having as much fun. When we all sat down at 2 large tables to order drinks and lunch, Tina shared her frustration. "No more," she said a bit louder, trying to make herself heard over the noise. "This seat is uncomfortable, and my back hurts." She stretched her arms above her head. "I just can't take it." "It's not that bad," I said to comfort her. "For you, maybe. You have a nice seat. Mine is as small as a napkin and feels like it's made of cardboard. Dad, this is my last ride with you unless you find me something better to sit on. If I could, I'd pay for a ride home just to be comfy." I was about to tell her she was being dramatic when someone spoke from behind me. "If you want, you can ride with me. I've got a comfy back seat that's empty." I turned to see Nadine offering a ride to my daughter. I was going to say it was fine, that Tina would prefer to stay with me, but Tina jumped in. "You've got a new passenger." I knew Nadine from our weekend rides together. We talked sometimes. She was nice, or at least she seemed pleasant behind those big sunglasses she always wore. We talked about the rides we had done and what was planned for the future, but it felt like she only answered a few questions before she found a way to leave the conversation. "You don't have to do that," I said, turning back to her. "It's fine. I haven't had anyone riding with me in a while. It'll be more fun than sitting on that bike of yours." "I love my bike." "Steve, it's a one-person bike. Honestly, I would think about getting something bigger and more comfortable for both of you." Tina and Nadine were right. It wasn't the most comfortable bike. It vibrated a lot, had a rigid frame, and even the seat wasn't very padded. It was an older model, which explained why it only had 2,200 miles on it when I got it. "It's built for looks, not long rides. Unless you enjoy going to the chiropractor," she added with a laugh. "Dad, can I ride back with her? How could I say no to that face?" "Only if Nadine lets me treat her to lunch." "Well, if you insist, but you really don't have to." "I want to for a fellow hog member. It feels right." I watched as Nadine walked around the table, grabbed a chair, and sat down next to Tina. I hadn't noticed before, but she was almost as tall as me, probably because of the tall boots she wore. She set her sunglasses on top of her black Harley hat and got comfortable in her chair. "Just an old injury," she told my daughter with a smile. It was clear she didn't want to share more as she quickly focused on the menu. From what I had heard, Nadine had been married, but about 6 years ago, she and her husband were in a bad accident while riding his bike. A car ran a red light and crashed into them. Her husband, Greg, didn't survive, and she was left with serious injuries. She worked hard for many months to learn how to walk again. The doctors helped save her leg, but it would never look or feel the same. It needed a lot of surgery. Tina, I have a 2-year-old bike with a comfy seat, speakers, and 2 cup holders. You can even plug in your iPod to play music through my speakers, I offered. Tina was clearly thrilled. Lunch was nice, but the best part was talking among the 3 of us. She answered all of Tina's questions and didn't hold back like she sometimes did with mine. When the road leader said it was time to head out again, we all got ready for our bikes, some of us faster than others. I had seen her bike many times. It was a bright red color with shiny gold and black spots. Her helmet and those big red sunglasses matched perfectly. I thought it looked a bit flashy, but when I glanced at my own bike in the sunlight, I decided to keep my thoughts to myself. When Tina got on, her face lit up as she settled into the large seat. With a big smile, she said it was even more comfy than our couch at home. She probably had a point. I rode about a bike's length behind them. They never stopped chatting. Nadine had a little system that let them talk, and I noticed them glancing back at me every now and then. I had no idea what they were saying, but it was clear they were having fun. An hour and a half later, we pulled into the dealership lot. Tina got off Nadine's bike, gave her a hug, and shared how much she enjoyed the ride. "Maybe next week, if your dad lets you, you can ride with me again," Nadine said. "Dad, please?" Tina pleaded, looking at me with big, hopeful eyes. "We'll see," I replied. Then I turned to Nadine. "Thanks for letting Tina ride with you. I know she felt really comfortable on the back of your bike. If you ever want to see what it's like to ride a real bike, I can give you a ride sometime." "No way! Me riding behind someone else? I could just imagine how that would go." "Thanks again, and maybe we'll meet up next week?" I asked, more like a hope than a certainty. I told Tina to hop on, and within 2 minutes we were heading back home. When we got back, we grilled on the deck. After a few drinks, I was ready for bed, but Tina had other plans. "Dad, let's go for a walk on the beach," she suggested, slipping on her shoes. We were out for about 10 minutes when she suddenly opened up. "Dad, do you still miss Mom?" "Every day, Pumpkin. When you think about her, does it still make you sad?" I was curious about why she was asking so much tonight. "Dad, sometimes when I close my eyes, I see Mom as she was before she got sick. I still love her and miss her, but I don't cry as much as I used to." "Sweetheart, just because you don't cry every day doesn't mean you love or miss her any less. It's just that things will get easier with time. The sadness will still be there, but it will lessen, and soon you'll only remember the happy moments. The sad ones, they will fade away too." I hoped that would clear things up for her. "Do you think you'll ever find someone else and get married again?" I stopped walking and knelt in the sand to meet Tina's gaze. I hugged her gently. "Sweetheart, your mom is one of a kind. I might meet someone new, but what your mom and I shared was special, and those memories will always be with me. Why do you ask?" "Grandma said you're missing her a lot. She said I should be moving on. What does missing her mean?" "It just means I still think about your mother a lot. That's normal, and when I feel ready to move forward, you will be the first to know." I smiled at her, though it was getting dark, so she might not have seen it. We shared a warm hug, and as I stood up, we held hands and walked back home together. It was a busy but straightforward week. On Wednesday, we went to my parents' house for dinner, where Tina made sure to tell my mom that she had ridden on someone else's bike the weekend before. "You're going to get your daughter into trouble, you know that?" my dad said, sounding a bit annoyed. "Dad, I understand, but it's no different than Tina riding her bike in the street." He mumbled something and left the dinner table. "He'll come around. You know how stubborn your dad can be. He just wants to protect you both," my mom said, touching my hand. "And it would upset him if anything happened to either of you." I knew she was right, but I felt sure that everything would be fine. I thought about whether to go on the ride Saturday since I had chores at home, but being out on the road with friends was something special. Tina asked if she could join, which brought up its own problems. "If Nadine doesn't come, you'll be riding on the back of my bike. Can you handle that?" Nadine said she's coming and I can ride with her, she insisted. All right, but what if she doesn't show up? She'll be there. She gave me her determined look, so I decided to drop it. Nadine, Nadine, Tina called out as she ran to her while she was putting her helmet in her bike's trunk. Can I ride with you again today? If it's okay with your dad, then it's perfectly fine with me. She looked my way for confirmation. Nadine, I don't want Tina to bother you by taking advantage of your kindness. Steve, like I said, no one has sat in that back seat since I bought the bike. I would love to have her company. It will be nice to have someone to chat with while I ride. Sure, if it's not a problem, I'd love to join you for today's ride. She was dressed in all black, from her jeans to her t-shirt featuring a design from Daytona 2008. This time, she also wore black sunglasses with a big CC on the sides and her favorite black Harley hat. She always looked ready for the open road. It was a poker run organized by another Hog chapter. We had 5 stops, getting 1 card at each, followed by a barbecue at the last stop. I didn't have much luck with the cards, not even a pair. When I found Tina and Nadine at the last stop, they were both grinning widely. Do you want to grab a bite to eat? I asked. They exchanged looks and burst out laughing. Did I miss something? We got a straight flush, Queen High, Tina said, looking at Nadine. And the prize is about $250. They started celebrating, with Tina especially excited. They talked about their win over lunch, discussing a new outfit along with shoes and accessories. I didn't win any of the 50 or so door prizes. Steve, could I take Tina shopping on Sunday for a bit in the afternoon? With Tina's eyes sparkling, I couldn't say no. Nadine, I hope Tina won't be too much trouble for you. I wanted to be polite if Tina had persuaded her into it. Not at all, and besides, we have some money to spend, right, girlfriend? Tina was so happy, clearly enjoying herself more than she had with just me in a long time. I gave her our address, grabbed Tina, and we rode off on my bike. Her husband passed away in an accident while they were riding, which is why she walks the way she does. I asked her how she got back on a motorcycle after everything. She said riding helps her feel closer to Greg. Dad, that sounds strange. Honey, do you still have all those stuffed animals Mom gave you? Of course, she answered quickly. When you look at them and hold them, do you think of Mom? She hesitated this time. It's just like Nadine riding her bike. They both loved it, and when she rides, she remembers all the good times with her husband. It makes her feel close to Greg, just like those stuffed animals help you remember your mom. We were getting into a topic I didn't really want to touch on tonight. It brought up memories, both good and bad, that I was trying to set aside so I could start moving forward with my life. After putting Tina to bed, I spent the rest of the evening on the rooftop deck, looking out at the ocean and remembering why we bought this house. On Sunday morning, Tina woke up by 8, took a shower, got dressed by 8:30, and finished her breakfast by 9. Nadine said she'd be here around 10. Relax, it's just a trip to the mall, she told me, giving me a look that said she didn't believe me. When a man goes shopping, he usually knows what he wants. If he needs a shirt, he picks one he likes and buys it. Most guys don't even try it on. And washing it before wearing? Not likely. As long as it still has tags on it, it'll be worn the next day. Women, from what I've seen, shop differently. They seem to wander around the mall for one item and come home with 5 things they didn't even plan to buy. For them, shopping feels like a fun adventure. You never know what you will find, but when they do, it's something they feel they have to get. I'll never understand women's shopping habits. I used to tell Lana to put her credit cards down and step back. Did she listen? Not at all. All I heard was, shop till you drop, as she and my mom left the house. Nadine pulled up in a nice Mustang. That must cost a lot, I thought, walking outside to check out her car. Very nice, I said. It was a bank repo. I got it for a great price. I'm glad it's automatic. There's no way I could drive a manual, she replied. Tina was already behind us, excited and ready to go. We won't be too long unless we find something we really love. Then you might need to come looking for us. I gave Nadine some cash, just in case you guys need it. We shared a smile. Moments later, they were off, and I got back to working on the new bathroom floor. I don't like laying tile in small spaces because of all the tricky cuts. I was about halfway done when I heard laughter. 2 women, one an adult and the other a girl, returned from the mall. I wiped my hands and went outside to see what they had bought. "Dad, it was so great. Everything was on sale," Tina said, showing me her 4 bags of clothes. "I can't believe how many things I got." I looked at Nadine, who just shrugged. I grabbed a bag, but before I could peek inside, Tina pulled it back. "Dad, that's my special bag." "Sorry, but remember when we went shopping last time? We got you some new clothes then." "Not like this," Nadine said with a smile. At that moment, I decided I didn't want to know more. They happily shared what they bought and even what they didn't buy. I glanced at my watch. "It's getting close to dinner," I said, turning to Nadine. "You're welcome to stay and eat with us. We're grilling something delicious. That's all I can say." "We'd love for you to join us, wouldn't we, Tina?" Tina couldn't hide her excitement. "Please stay, Nadine," she urged. Nadine looked unsure. "I should probably leave you two alone." I couldn't convince her to stay, so Tina stepped up. "No, you really have to stay, please," she kept saying. Who could say no to that? Nadine smiled and said she would be happy to join us. I got chicken and baked potatoes ready on the grill while the women made a fresh salad. Nadine looked around our home, clearly interested. "It's a lovely place you have. How long have you lived here?" "Just over 4 years. We sold our condo downtown and bought this place with my family. They rent out their apartments most of the year, but Tina and I live here all the time." "It must be amazing living so close to the ocean." "It truly is, and if your leg isn't bothering you too much, I'd love to show you the rooftop deck with its stunning view." I could tell she would find a way to get up there. Looking west, the sun was setting over the water. The colors were so beautiful that they looked like they belonged in a travel magazine. "Oh, wow! It's gorgeous up here," she said, taking off her sunglasses and shaking her hair back. "If I lived here, I think I'd want to stay up here all the time." It had been a while since I'd enjoyed the sunset from the roof. I used to take Lana up there many nights to see the view and listen to the waves. I felt a bit sad thinking about those times. We spent the next hour on the roof, talking and enjoying the moment. "Look at the time," Nadine said, glancing at her watch. "I need to head home, put my things away, and get ready for work tomorrow. Thank you both for a lovely day." "Nadine, thank you for taking Tina shopping. I'm not much of a shopper, and I'm sure you made it more fun than I would have." We safely made our way back downstairs. After hugs and goodbyes, Nadine drove off with a roar from her Mustang. "I had so much fun today." Tina was glowing with happiness. "I hope you didn't spend all her money." "Nope, we shared the $250, but somehow it felt like we got a lot more than that." She shook her head. "I must have added it up wrong." I smiled at her. After that, I took a shower, set out my clothes for tomorrow, and went to say goodnight to Tina. "Dad, for some reason, Nadine thought you were divorced. I told her about Mom, and she said she was sorry for my loss and that she understands how it feels to lose someone you love. Honey, did sharing that make you feel uncomfortable with someone you don't know well?" "Dad, Nadine isn't a stranger, she's my friend." What could I say to that? Over the next 6 months, we spent a lot of time with Nadine and our hog friends. During our weekend rides, Tina always happily sat behind Nadine. Sometimes I would glance at them and think they reminded me of Lana and Tina. Tina seemed happy again. We weren't actually a couple. Everyone just thought we were. We were good friends who liked being together. When someone invited either Nadine or me, they usually expected the other to come along. Nadine joined us for barbecues at our house and invited us over to hers one evening after a ride that ended near her neighborhood. Her home was a charming 3-bedroom house in a gated community in Orange Park that she and her husband had bought just before the accident. Although she didn't often talk about him or her past, she and Tina became good friends. I suspected that Tina knew more than she was saying. It was a hot 92 degrees when our ride wrapped up at the dealership. My legs felt like they were on fire while sitting on my bike at every stoplight that lasted more than 30 seconds. Dressed in a sleeveless shirt and jeans, I was eager to change into some light shorts and sandals. Nadine, with Tina sitting behind her, followed me home. When we pulled into my driveway, Tommy and his family were already there. Tommy didn't rent out his unit in the summer. We introduced ourselves, opened cold drinks, and relaxed in the shade on the back deck. "Nadine, if you want to change out of those heavy jeans, I can find you a pair of shorts," Ruth, Tommy's wife, offered. "I'm fine," she replied, taking off her riding boots and putting on sandals. I joined in the conversation. "Come on, Nadine, put on some shorts and we'll walk down to the beach to cool off." Just then, I felt a pinch on my arm while Nadine said no. Tina met my eyes and silently said no. "Tina, why don't you help me get something for the grill? We'll be back in a minute." "Don't forget some more drinks when you return," Tommy called out. We went inside and up to our place. "Dad, she's a bit shy about the scars on her right leg and doesn't want anyone to see them. That's why you never see her in shorts." "They can't be that bad," I said. "They're pretty big and noticeable, Dad. I've seen them." "When did you see them?" I started to ask. "Remember when we went shopping for clothes? I caught a quick look at them in the mirror. She said they don't hurt, but it's hard for her to bend her leg." I think she feels more frustrated than anything else. And being a woman, well, you can imagine how that goes. "That's wild. She's really pretty. So what if she has a few scars? Everyone has flaws." "You can tell her that because I'm not going to." Nadine was about 5'8", and I guessed she weighed around 130, though it was tough to tell since she never wore tight clothes. Her black t-shirts were loose, and her jeans were the baggy kind, not the new tight styles. Most of the time she wore a black Harley hat that hid her long, shiny black hair, which she always kept in a ponytail tied back with a leather braid. She seemed to be about 28, although I never asked her. I thought she was quite attractive. She wasn't a model, but definitely pleasant to look at. I found myself glancing at her more often, almost studying her. The reason I hadn't thought of her in a romantic way before was that everything about her made me cautious. Some guys in the group had tried to get to know her, but it didn't end well for them. I returned with 3 more drinks and a menu that everyone agreed on, especially since I was providing the food and making it. Dinner was nice and easygoing. I opened a bottle of wine, but Nadine politely turned it down, saying she preferred to stay focused. When it began to get dark, she asked if we could go up to the roof to watch the sunset. I agreed, thinking it was a great idea, and invited everyone else, but they all said they had seen plenty of sunsets already. As usual, Nadine struggled a bit with the stairs. I almost joked about needing an elevator for her, but decided against it. On the roof deck, we settled into 2 loungers waiting for the colors to change. "I could sit here forever," she said, glancing at me. "It's so peaceful listening to the ocean and watching such a beautiful scene. It reminds me how small we really are." She was right. The sunset was lovely as always. She seemed relaxed, but when she noticed me watching her, she changed a bit. I leaned over and gave her a warm hug, and to my surprise, she hugged me back for the first time. I hesitated to lean in closer, unsure of how she would feel about that. When we pulled away, she looked at me as if wondering what I was thinking. I felt uncertain too. There was no plan for the next weekend. She told me to call her if I wanted to hang out. After that, she headed off. "Are you dating her, or is it just friends?" Tommy asked once we were alone. "Honestly, I'm not really sure. The 3 of us have been hanging out and I want to know her better, but whenever I try to get closer, she backs away, keeping her distance. One thing is clear, she definitely has feelings for Tina." "Why not ask Tina what's going on? Maybe she just doesn't feel a strong connection," I suggested. "Look who's talking! At least I was brave enough to stand up to Dad and get my motorcycle," she laughed. "That doesn't really count. If Dad told you not to do something and you did it anyway, then that would be a different story." We both laughed, knowing that would never happen. Later that evening, before I said goodnight to Tina, we had a short chat. "Why does Nadine seem so distant with me? Did I upset her?" I asked. "If I did, I really don't know how." "Dad, she likes you. She even told me herself. It's just that she's a bit private," Tina replied, looking away. "Okay, spill the beans. You know something you're not sharing," I pressed gently. "I promised Nadine I wouldn't say anything. I gave her my word," Tina said, her eyes showing concern. "I decided to drop it. I would never ask you to break someone's trust. Just tell her I'm sorry if I upset her in any way, okay?" "Sure, Dad, but I don't think that will be needed." We shared a hug and then called it a night, for Tina, that is. With a glass of wine in my hand, I found myself on the rooftop deck that night. Thoughts of my wife filled my mind, and I was hoping for some answers. I didn't cry, but my eyes got a bit misty. I still missed Lana a lot. Even though I thought I was moving forward, remembering the good times brought on a wave of sadness. I loved Lana and always would, but that night, I realized I had to let go if I wanted to keep living. I wasn't closing that chapter of my life. I was simply moving those memories to a special place in my heart where they would stay forever. On Sunday, I finished the bathroom floor and started working on the kitchen cupboard doors. With a dust mask on, Tina helped me sand the flat doors while I took care of the more detailed ones. The week flew by, and on Thursday, I got a call from Nadine. "Dad, Nadine is on the phone and wants to know about this weekend," Tina called up the stairs. I picked up the phone. "Hi, Nadine. I was just thinking about you," I said, maybe stretching the truth a bit, but she had crossed my mind. "Are we still on for Saturday?" she asked. "Of course," I replied excitedly. "I was thinking of taking a drive down A1A to St. Augustine. We can leave here around 10 and get there in plenty of time for brunch at a great restaurant." "That sounds wonderful. Is Tina joining us?" "She can't make it this time. My parents are taking her to lunch and then to see the naval base where my dad works." She wanted to see the aircraft carriers, and Dad made it happen for her. There was a brief pause. "All right, I'll see you before 10. We talked a bit more, but it felt like pulling teeth to get her to say much. "Are we going on a trip this weekend?" Tina asked. "Nadine and I are." "You and Grandma and Grandpa are going to lunch, then the naval base tour you wanted. Why can't I go with you two? I need some time alone with Nadine to talk about something important, that's all." Dad has a friend, she sang teasingly. "I wouldn't call Nadine that yet." "Dad, all the new Hog members think you two are dating. Mind your words, young lady. Dad, I'm not a child anymore. I can see she likes you, but I don't understand why you don't feel the same. It's a bit tricky, that's all." "What's tricky? If you like each other, just talk about it. The kids at my school don't take this long." "Well, you'll be the first to know if anything changes. You two have been together for months. It seems like the only ones who don't notice are you, so what's for dinner?" On Saturday, my parents came right after 9 to pick up Tina. They didn't leave immediately. Tina said she wanted to wait to say hi to Nadine. My mom and dad wanted to meet her too. I felt a bit nervous as I waited, changing my clothes twice before she arrived. By 9:30, I was gazing out the window, waiting for her. Tina looked at me and shook her head, a little annoyed. Finally, Nadine arrived about 10 minutes after 10, and I felt relieved. Since it was her first time meeting my parents, I introduced everyone. Nadine told my parents she was happy to meet them, and then turned to Tina. "Tina, I'm sorry you can't join us today," Nadine said, looking at me. We walked downstairs together. I hugged Tina and said goodbye. Nadine also hugged her and added, "Have fun with Grandma and Grandpa, and make sure you do what feels right." After that, Tina went back upstairs to meet her grandparents. Once that was done, Nadine and I left. It was a lovely Florida morning as we drove south along A1A, the beautiful ocean road. I found myself lost in thought, remembering the first week we moved into the house before Lana got sick. With the windows down, the salty air filled the car, and I could hear the waves crashing, making me feel thankful to be alive. A beep from Nadine's horn brought me back to the moment. She said she needed to stop quickly, so we pulled into the next convenience store. "My coffee did not sit well with me this morning," she said as she exited the restroom, putting on her sunglasses and helmet. I filled up my gas tank, and just like the song by Willie Nelson says, we were on the road again a couple of minutes later. Brunch was great. Nadine teased me a bit when I said I would pay for it. After we finished eating, we did the tourist thing, strolling up and down St. George Street looking at the shops. I got her a small souvenir for her bike, and she treated me to a chocolate almond ice cream cone. We wandered through the historic district, enjoying the old houses and checking out some charming bed and breakfasts. By 2 o'clock, we decided to head back home, planning to stay overnight next time so we wouldn't have to hurry. We were only about 20 miles from home when everything changed. I was riding on the right side of the lane, and Nadine was a little behind me. The traffic light was red as we approached the intersection. I slowed my bike almost to a stop. When the light turned green, I started to go, but suddenly a car raced through the intersection from my right. I didn't see it in time. The car struck the front wheel of my bike, breaking it and sending me spinning. I don't remember hitting the car or being thrown over the trunk. People later told me I rolled about 25 feet before I landed on my back. The whole thing happened in what seemed like a few seconds. I think I lost consciousness when I hit the car or the ground. Luckily, I had my safety gear on and it did its job. The car finally stopped, along with several others. Everyone was on their phones, calling for help. I was in shock, unsure of what had just happened, but I was grateful that I wasn't severely hurt. There were loud voices around me. A young man kept apologizing over and over. Others were telling me not to move in case I was injured. After checking my legs and arms, I felt relieved that everything seemed to be fine. "Nadine!" I called out as the first police car arrived, its sirens blaring. I could hear another one coming, but my mind was focused on finding her and worrying about her safety. One of the officers was trying to keep the crowd back when I finally saw Nadine out of the corner of my eye. She rushed over to me. Tears were streaming down her face. We exchanged a long look, silent for a moment, until she hugged me tightly, whispering, "I thought you were dead." "Only the good die young," I joked lightly, trying to ease the tension of the moment. I was trying my best to be tough, but I quickly realized that even though my bones weren't broken, my arms and legs were scraped, and I had more bruises than I could count. My mind was starting to clear. I wanted to see what happened to my bike, but mostly I just wanted to leave the scene. But that didn't seem likely. "Mr. Moore, please stay still while we check for any injuries," the medic said, covering my elbow, knee, and shoulder with clean bandages. I noticed my helmet and sunglasses were gone, but I still had my riding gloves on. Nadine sat beside me, staring with her big dark brown eyes and a blank look. "Nadine, are you okay?" She didn't answer. "Can someone please check on my friend? I think she needs help," I pleaded. They didn't respond. "Something's wrong. Nadine, can you hear me?" Still, nothing. I couldn't wait anymore. I sat up and reached for her, wrapping my arms around her. "It's all right. Can you hear me?" "I'm okay. We're okay. Just listen," I said. But she just stared ahead. I leaned closer to comfort her. To my surprise, her response was warm and filled with emotion. "Looks like your friend is going to be fine," the medic said with a smile. "We're taking you to the hospital. She can come with us or meet us there." I looked at her one more time. "I think it's best if she comes with us." One of the police officers said they would take both bikes to the storage area. "Can someone take my friend's trike to the hospital where we're going?" The officers exchanged glances and promised they would find a way to help. Soon, we were loaded into the ambulance, and with the sirens blaring, we were on our way. Nadine stayed by my side during all the checks and tests. I held her hand and stroked her cheek, repeating that everything would be fine. I wasn't a doctor, but it seemed to me she was in shock. It took almost 2 hours before someone helped Nadine. They seemed more worried about me, but I was becoming more concerned for her. I had some bumps and bruises that would heal, but I didn't know how she was doing. "She lost her husband in a motorcycle accident a couple of years ago," I told the doctor while he checked her pulse and examined her briefly. I think seeing me lying there brought back those memories. "You might be right," he replied. "But physically, she's fine. You're who she saw and you're who she's worried about. Keep telling her you're okay. Once she sees that and understands, it should help her feel better. If that doesn't work, there are other professionals who can help with these issues." Almost 6 hours after I arrived, I was finally allowed to leave. After I spoke to the police and found out where to pick up my bike next week, we were done for the day. With some pain relief medicine in hand, we walked out together. We found Nadine's trike parked in the emergency lot, in a space for people with disabilities. She still didn't seem like herself. We held hands and looked into each other's eyes, unsure of what would happen next. There was no way she could drive us home. I found her keys and helmet in her bike. My helmet was still missing. I helped her into the back seat, put her helmet on, and quickly learned how to operate a Harley trike. It looked a lot like a bike I once rode, but it had a reverse gear. After a couple of tries, I finally got us going, and we headed up A1A towards Jacksonville and home. More than once, I felt her wrap her arms around me. Normally, I would turn around and say something nice, or at least smile, but given everything that happened that day, I was just grateful to be okay and going home. I thought about calling Tina or Tommy, but my hands were busy, and I didn't want to explain our situation just yet. I was glad tomorrow was Sunday. I pulled into the driveway and parked behind our house. I got off, took off her helmet, and saw sadness in her eyes. Things weren't back to normal yet. I offered her a comforting gesture before leading her inside. Once we were in the house, I helped her sit in a kitchen chair, gave her a soda, and grabbed one for myself. I was thankful Tina wasn't home yet. I knew my mom was waiting for me to call and let her know we were home safely. I felt uncertain about what to do next. Nadine's eyes were on me. She seemed to want me close. Maybe a good night's sleep would help her feel better? I called my mom. Mom, can you do me a favor? Can you keep Tina until tomorrow evening? Of course, sweetie. We'd love to have her stay the night. Don't worry, we'll take good care of her. Thanks, Mom. I owe you one. Just enjoy your evening, she said cheerfully. Fun wasn't what I was feeling right now. I ordered a pizza and encouraged Nadine to eat 2 slices. She was getting better, but there was no way I would let her drive home. It didn't matter that she didn't have anything with her. She was staying put. I showed her where the bathroom and shower were, gave her a pair of sweatpants and one of my t-shirts, and closed the door. It took a few minutes before I heard the shower start, which was a good sign. 15 minutes later, it was my turn. I carefully took off the remaining parts of my clothes and tossed them onto the bathroom floor. I knew I would probably throw them away later because of the stains on them. I had wrapped some plastic around my knee and elbow to keep the bandages dry, knowing I would have to get more in the morning. Right now, I only had a few small band-aids, but I needed a lot more than that. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I could see I looked worse for wear. There were scrapes and marks all over me, and I could tell bruises were starting to form. I knew they would look worse in a few days, but like always, I would find a way to hide them from everyone, especially my family. Even parts that weren't hurt stung when the water hit them. I tried to stay quiet despite the pain. I realized I wasn't as strong as I thought I was. I washed as gently as I could before the soap's sting became too much. Instead of rubbing my body dry, I just patted it to remove the extra water. By the time I was done, I knew the towel would also end up in the trash. I was in pain, but I whispered a little prayer, thankful that things could have been a lot worse. I managed to put on some shorts, a sleeveless shirt, and sandals. My left arm was okay, but it was hard to dress myself with the bandages on my right elbow and shoulder. I was hurting, but after taking a pain pill, I knew relief would come soon. After I finished in the bathroom, I started looking for Nadine. When I called her name twice without an answer, I began to worry. I hope she didn't try to leave. Then I remembered I still had her keys. After checking around outside, I went back upstairs. I had a feeling I knew where she was. I grabbed 2 sodas from the fridge and made my way to the roof. The stairs were a struggle, and I could already tell I would be sore tomorrow. As I reached the top step and saw the open door, I knew I was right. Nadine was sitting in one of the chairs, looking out at the dark beach. The sun had set hours ago. The cool ocean breeze felt nice against my skin. She turned around, smiled, and I handed her a soda before dropping down beside her with a thud. I was moving slowly, as if my body were heavy. It was quiet and dark, almost peaceful, as we sat together in silence. "I thought you were gone," she said in a shaky voice. Even in the dark, I could see tears starting to form again. I took her hand gently in mine. She let out a sob. "I couldn't move. You were thrown over that car before I could even reach you. You were lying still, and all I could do was stand there and look at you. My legs wouldn't budge, and it felt like my heart had stopped. All those memories came rushing back. Not again. People were screaming and rushing to you, and I felt so helpless. I'm so sorry." When I heard someone say not to move you, I knew you were still there, but I was too scared to look. I don't even remember how I got to you. I just felt you were alive and hoped it wasn't a false alarm like before. I wanted to shout, cry, or laugh, but no sound came out. You were talking, but I couldn't hear you clearly. I still can't remember everything. All that mattered was that you were alive, and I hadn't lost you. I reached over and wiped the tears from her cheeks, then gave her a soft kiss. "I'm fine, just a little banged up, but okay. I'm really glad I wore my helmet and gloves. It could have been much worse." "Steve, you have no idea how bad it could have been." She raised her voice a little. "You could have gotten seriously hurt. How would I have explained that to Tina? She would have lost both her parents, and I would have felt responsible." "Responsible, Nadine? I don't get it." "I was there and did nothing, just like last time. I was right there and I froze. Greg died and I couldn't help, and now it's happening again with you." "Listen to me," I said, holding her face gently with my hands. "You didn't have the power to stop this. The other person was rushing. I'm just glad I was in front of you, or you could have been hurt too." I kissed her again, this time more deeply. We are both okay, and in a couple of weeks this will just be another hard memory we will get through. This time she kissed me back. Eventually, after midnight, we made our way off the roof and back into my place. I thought about where we would sleep, but she made that choice for me. I handed her a new toothbrush I had, and after we both took care of ourselves, she led me to my bed. No, we didn't go that far, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. With the medication and my soreness, it might not have been what we hoped for. Instead, we shared tender moments and then fell asleep in each other's arms. The pain woke me from a deep sleep just after 9. I carefully untangled myself from Nadine, which took a little time. I went to the bathroom, took 2 more pain pills, and drank a large glass of water. After rinsing with mouthwash, I climbed back into bed next to her. I saw that she was wearing my t-shirt and some clothes, but nothing else. I thought about checking under the covers, but decided not to. There was no need to wake her now. If she wanted to talk or share more, she could. Before long, I drifted back to sleep. I was slowly waking from a fog of sleep when I saw a familiar face. This time, it wasn't Tina looking at me, it was Nadine. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly. "Sore but alive," I replied. She smiled at me. "Did you sleep well last night?" I asked, gently leaning toward her. "You snore, did you know that?" she replied playfully, giving me a light push. "I don't snore. I've never snored," I said. "Believe me, you do. I'm surprised your wife never pointed it out." "Maybe it was the pain pills I took?" I suggested. "Sure, keep telling yourself that." I was going to tease her a little, but decided against it. Instead, I leaned in and gave her a soft kiss. It was sweet and lingered, leaving me wanting more. "I'll be back in a moment," she said as she got up to go to the bathroom. I could hear the toilet flush and the sound of water running. I didn't stare, but I realized Tina was right about something. Now, what were we talking about? The next half hour was filled with gentle kisses. We explored each other's hands, taking our time. I could feel how she felt and began to wonder about my own feelings. Was I being too careful? If she wanted to stop, she would tell me, right? I reached out slowly, and when she didn't pull away, I continued. Our breathing got heavier, and we felt more connected with each passing moment. I noticed her hesitance, so I was gentle. As I leaned in, the moment felt warm and tender, bringing us closer together. We were lost in each other, letting everything else fade away. I continued until she began to relax. After, she took my hand and rested her head on my shoulder. I could feel her breath and was unsure what to say next. She mentioned she hadn't been with anyone since her husband passed away, which made things a bit awkward. We ended up laughing about it. She got up and brought me a warm washcloth. After cleaning up, I set the cloth aside and she smiled at me. We talked about having breakfast before getting into anything serious. I'd have liked to share a shower with her, but she had other plans. I decided not to grow a beard, as shaving with my sore shoulder would be hard. When she stepped out of the shower, I thought she looked beautiful. Her big brown eyes showed thanks for my quiet acceptance of her. "Later, food first," she said, playfully nudging me toward the shower while she wrapped her long hair in a towel. This morning's shower wasn't any easier than the one last night. I didn't bother with the plastic wrap this time. No matter what, the bandages would get wet anyway. I felt discomfort even with the pain meds, knowing it would probably last for the next week. We decided not to take the motorcycles and instead took my car. After passing on Denny's because it was busy, I found a small diner a couple of miles down the beach that was nearly full. The coffee was good, but the bacon and buttermilk pancakes were exceptional. I had to give up after 5 pancakes, 2 eggs, and 4 pieces of bacon. Nadine barely made a dent in her meal. As I enjoyed my coffee, she started talking. "Okay, where do we go from here?" Nadine asked, reaching for my hands across the table. "How about back to my place?" I replied, and her face showed her thoughts clearly. "Seriously, what's next for us?" "Well, since I think we're officially a couple now, we can talk about what we want from this relationship and what we both prefer. But there's something else, too. There's someone we both know. She's short, has light brown hair, and can be quite a handful sometimes, especially when it comes to us. Did you know she said we've been a thing for a while, even if we didn't realize it? Steve, you know I have my feelings about Tina, but there's something important we need to discuss, even if I'd rather not do it here." "That's fine. I've had enough coffee. Let's go back to my place. Tommy will probably bring Tina back after lunch, so we have maybe 2 hours. We held hands on the way back, talking a little. Once we were inside, we sat down on the couch in the living room. "Steve, I don't know how to say this easily, so I'll just be honest, I might not be able to have kids," she said, waiting to see how I would react. "Did you hear what I said? The doctor said that because of the accident, it might be hard for me to conceive. They mentioned options like in vitro fertilization, but that feels too technical for me. Since Greg passed, I haven't even thought about marrying anyone or starting a family. So if you want a big family, I don't think I'm the right person." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Nadine, I'm not looking for a big family. One more child would be nice, but it's not a deal breaker for me. I've already got Tina, and if you can't have kids, we could think about adoption if we want another. Also, because of my leg, I can't ski or hike for any distance. I can dance, but there's a lot I can't do. My leg will never be the same." She looked down, saying, "And it's not the best sight either." She was being open with me, almost as if she was checking my response, none of which had been a deal-breaker so far. "I still keep in touch with Greg's parents, and probably always will. I'm their only link to their son." She started to tear up again. "Nadine, I still talk to Lana's parents, and Tina has a good relationship with them. I would never come between you and them. That's just not who I am. As for skiing, hiking, or dancing, that stuff doesn't matter to me. I'm excited to get to know you better. I know a little about you, but I want to know a lot more. Honestly, Tina probably knows more about you than I do. You're right. We've even had some deep talks about you. She understands you a lot better than you might think. But one thing I realized right away is that you mean everything to her right now. I don't think she could be any closer to you if she tried." I thought I knew that, but it felt good to hear it from someone else. "Tina thinks very highly of you and has encouraged me many times to reach out." "And why didn't you?" "I guess I just wasn't ready to move on. Lana wasn't just my wife. She was my best friend. We did everything together. When she got sick, we fought hard to get through it. When she died, it felt like I lost a huge part of myself. Wanting to know you better helped me find the strength to start moving forward. I keep Lana in my heart, but I want more than just memories now. I want someone real, someone to share my life with. At first, it looked like you only wanted to be friends. I wasn't sure if you wanted to be closer to me. But here we are, and I'm ready to take the next step with you." We talked during the next hour. There were some disagreements, but they were minor. We knew we weren't the same, nor did we want to be. "Oh my gosh," I said, looking at my watch. "Tommy is going to be here soon. I need to get ready." "Steve, you are ready." "No, I need to put on long pants and a long-sleeve shirt. I don't want my parents, especially my dad, to find out about the accident." "Steve, you're not a little kid." "Nadine, you don't know my dad." Tommy asked where my bike was, and I just said I was having some work done on it. Tina hugged me and then kept watching Nadine, looking for any changes in how we were acting towards each other. After Tommy and his friends left, Tina sat down at the kitchen table and looked directly at me. "Okay, what happened? And where's your bike? Don't even try to tell me it's being worked on." She was too sharp for someone about to turn 10. "It just needed a little work on the front end, that's all." "On Sunday? Dad, you're not fooling Uncle Tommy." "Tell her, Steve," Nadine said, joining us. "Okay, but don't worry, it was nothing serious. I had a small accident yesterday." Before I could say anything more, I was hit with a wave of questions, mostly asking how I was. "I'm fine, just a few scrapes and bruises." Against my wishes, Nadine told Tina the whole story about yesterday, including the visit to the hospital. Tina listened, and then focused on one thing Nadine mentioned. "Wait a minute, Nadine, you stayed the night?" Nadine looked at me. "I did, but we slept in different beds. Nadine, I'm not a kid anymore." She was grinning now. "So does this mean you two are officially a couple?" Once again, Nadine looked at me for support. "I guess we are," she told Tina. "Way to go, girl," Tina said, giving Nadine a high five. "Wait until I tell Grandma." She was really worried that Dad might never find someone special again. At least now she wouldn't have to worry about him anymore. That would be our responsibility. Tina and Nadine talked a lot for the next hour. Nadine stayed for a bit longer, shared dinner with us, and then said it was time for her to go. "I don't want to ruin this lovely evening, but I have to get home. I have work tomorrow, and it's been a bit tough lately. She smiled as she said goodbye. I'll walk you to your bike, I told her. She hugged Tina before leaving. I walked her to her bike, said goodbye again, and reminded her to be careful. Call me when you get home, okay? Don't worry, I will. I really want to keep this connection strong. Afterward, I spent about an hour answering Tina's questions about how I was feeling. Then it was time to change my dressings. My knee hurt, but my shoulder was worse. It was swollen with ugly colors and aching badly. I knew it was time for another pill. I placed some old towels on the bed to catch any blood that might seep through the bandages. Just as I was getting ready to settle into bed, Nadine called. Did you miss me? You know I did. Why not come back so we can chat? So that's what we're calling it now? How else can we get to know each other if we don't talk? Steve, there's something important we didn't mention before. We're exclusive, right? No one else? Nadine, I said gently. Well, you never know unless you ask. After this weekend, I just wanted to be sure. We've been exclusive for what, 6 months? Everyone knew except us. She laughed. I guess you're right. What's the plan with your bike? I'll call my insurance tomorrow, send them the accident report, and let them know about the bike. I didn't really see it after the accident. How bad is it? Let's just say you might want to start looking for a replacement. That bad? What I saw wasn't good. The front was badly damaged, the left side was all scratched up, and the rear tire didn't look great either. It might be time to find another bike. You have good insurance, right? I do, but if they decide to total my bike, it will affect my insurance costs, and that can be a hassle. It wasn't your fault. It doesn't matter. An accident is still an accident. People will see me as a risk anyway. It's not fair, but that's how life can be. Love is about giving without asking for much, but wanting the same in return. There was a moment of silence after that. Call me tomorrow, okay? I could hear the feeling in her voice. You know I will. Sleep came easily, probably thanks to the pain medication I took. I was glad I set both my radio and phone alarms because I barely noticed when they went off. I almost skipped my shower because I was already tired of feeling uncomfortable. Tina barely made it to school on time. The next few days were busy. I filled my calendar with doctor visits, meetings with the insurance person, and trying to keep my injuries from my boss and family. But secrets don't last forever. Somehow my dad found out. Even though he didn't say anything, after our talk the next weekend, I sensed that he knew. I wasn't a kid anymore looking for his approval. I just didn't want to cause my parents any worry. Without a bike to ride, Nadine and I spent a lot of time talking over the weekend. When Tommy invited us over to his house in town on Saturday evening, I mentioned I would bring Nadine along. I thought you two weren't together, he asked. Things have changed a bit. Everyone liked Nadine. When the women headed to the kitchen, I felt nervous. Whenever women gather, it usually means they will have many things to discuss, especially about me. I hoped they wouldn't put any doubts in Nadine's mind. We became the focus of conversation. As we were leaving, I kissed my mom goodnight and she whispered in my ear, "Don't mess this up." I felt like I already knew enough about Nadine. My dad shook my hand and told me he hoped I felt better soon. He was just letting me know he understood. Parents always seem to know things, no matter how old you get. That was fun, Nadine said on the way back to my place, watching me drive. Do you think it's fair that you know all my secrets and I know so little about you? I asked. Ask away. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Maybe later. Right now, I just want to change into something comfortable. I wondered if Nadine would ever feel relaxed enough around me to wear something other than long pants, which was all I had seen her in so far. Nothing had been mentioned about that night. Was she hoping to stay over? We weren't in high school anymore, and it was fine for her to stay, but it felt new. I didn't want her to feel pressured, especially with Tina to think about. What's wrong? She asked as we stepped into my place. I paused before asking if she was free later. Oh, I'm glad you asked. Can I spend the night? I'll need to call my mom, but I know she'll say yes. Then she shot me a teasing look. Steve, I can't read your mind. If you want something, just say so. I hinted at my interest in a gentle way. This time I wanted to connect with her completely. I lightly touched her knee to show my feelings. When she tried to move my hand, I whispered, No, I want to be close to you. I think you're amazing, just the way you are. Our feelings filled the space around us. An hour later, I lay next to her, hoping Tina hadn't noticed us. Nadine tried her best to stay quiet, but I worried the neighbors might have overheard her happiness. I was just thankful I had been careful earlier in the week, considering everything. I still wasn't moving around as easily as I wanted, but we made things work. "Why were you being careful?" Nadine asked. "Are you worried about something?" "I just think this isn't the best time for surprises." "Steve, didn't you hear me last time? It would take a miracle for that to happen." "Look, my dad surprised my mom when they thought she couldn't have more kids. My brother had similar surprises, too. Men in my family have a habit of creating unexpected situations, and I don't think you want that right now. Do you?" "That's exactly my point. You make decisions without talking to me." She tried to look annoyed. "You want a child?" I didn't say that either. "We need to discuss everything that involves the three of us." She was right about that. I wouldn't overlook that again. I glanced at the clock and saw we had time for one more moment together. After some difficulty in adjusting, Nadine suggested it was her turn to lead. I wasn't a big fan of this idea since I liked being in charge, but it worked for us this time. For a moment, I thought of Lana. The warmth I felt after being with Nadine reminded me of all the wonderful moments I had with her. I felt a twinge of guilt. "A penny for your thoughts," Nadine said, smiling at me. Then she added playfully, "You really know how to push my buttons, I'll give you that." "Nadine, I don't want you to be upset, but I have a personal question for you." "Go ahead. After what we've just shared, there can't be too many secrets left. Please don't take this the wrong way." I hesitated. "When you're with me, do you ever think about Greg?" "Already bringing up your late wife, huh?" She gave me a serious look, and I worried I had messed up this time. "Relax. I'm just surprised I didn't mention Greg's name when I was wrapped up in the moment." "So, you're not angry?" "Steve, we both have pasts with two special people who meant a lot to us. They were taken from us, or we would still be with them. I think about Greg every day, and I know he'd want me to find happiness. I'm sure it's the same for you and Lana. I'm just thankful we have this chance to maybe find a little of what we once had with them. But listen, if I find you thinking about someone else, we'll need to talk." With that assurance, things smoothed out. On Thursday afternoon, my insurance agent finally got back to me. "Steve, we sent your bike to Daytona Beach Harley-Davidson for a second look. We already had one estimate, but we wanted another opinion." "So, what's the damage?" "I'm afraid you won't like it, but we've decided to total the bike. Fixing it would cost more than it's worth." I expected this news, but I was surprised by the amount he told me. "Don, that's a lot less than I thought. The bike hasn't even been used much, and it cost over $32,000 to build." "But Steve, you didn't pay $32,000 for it." "That doesn't matter. We're discussing its value. The bike is worth at least $30,000. I paid over $25,000, and you're offering me $22,000. If I get a lawyer and fight this, you'll end up spending more in the long run. How about you meet me halfway? Just give me $23,500 and we're done. I'll buy another bike, and you'll keep the policy." He was still hesitant. "I'll even let you take a look at my beach house. If your offer is good, you'll get the house in exchange, which will make up for any loss on the bike. Deal?" I knew he had more room to negotiate than he was showing. I worked in insurance, just not for personal items. I had insured the bike for $27,000, thinking repairs could be expensive. He agreed, and we moved on to discussing the beach house. It was a good deal for him because insurance was pricey for any property near the ocean, even 1 block away. 3 days later, I had the check and took my 2 girls to see what bikes were available. "You have to buy a Harley. The only question is, how much do you want to spend?" Nadine said as we walked into the dealership with Tina. I was thinking of a used model, maybe 1 or 2 years old. Everyone warned me not to get a bike that was too small because I might want to upgrade later. They said I'd end up losing money on the trade. After talking to the Harley dealership salesman, he made a suggestion. "The smallest bike I'd recommend is a Road King. It has a windshield, storage bags, and is comfortable for 2 riders." I noticed Tina didn't look too excited about what I was considering. "Dad, what about that one?" she asked, pointing to a shiny crimson bike with a full fairing. "It has a trunk and a nice backrest. I'd be comfortable riding on this one." Nadine chimed in with her thoughts. "Steve, You might enjoy listening to the radio on your daily trips to work, and Tina can enjoy her music during our rides, I said. There were many models to choose from. I think the best way to decide is to try them all, I suggested. So we took the time to test ride all the available bikes, from the Road King to the Screaming Eagle Ultra. Most of them were new except for the Screaming Eagle, which was usually ordered specially. However, it was quite expensive at about $35,000, way over my budget. I learned that used bikes weren't much cheaper than I thought. The one-year-old bikes were almost as pricey as new ones, and the warranties weren't very good. We spent almost 4 hours looking around. When I finally narrowed it down to 2 choices, I decided to think it over overnight. Afterward, we went out for pizza at Donato's. I was conflicted. My mind kept wandering back to the bikes. Thankfully, Nadine drove us in her Mustang, while I focused on the motorcycle dealership. Even at the restaurant, I was distracted. "Hello, Steve," Nadine called, trying to get my attention. "I'm sorry, I'm just worried about spending a lot of money and I want to make the right choice," I replied. "Both bikes are really nice, and I'm sure you'd enjoy either one, but is that enough reason to miss out on the 2 best-looking women in here?" That comment brought me back to the moment. I still thought about the bikes, but I was also noticing more around me. Nadine drove us back to the beach house. I could tell she wasn't ready to head home just yet. "Do you want some company tonight?" I leaned over, smiled, and asked her. "I don't have anything fancy to offer, but I could share some fun moments with you." I decided I wanted to spend more time with Nadine. While Nadine was in the shower, Tina asked me if Nadine was more than just a friend. She was getting used to having Nadine around, especially on weekends. It was becoming everyday life for her to see Nadine next to me on Saturday and Sunday mornings. I looked at Tina, trying to find words to explain it. I care a lot about her, but that's a question I've been asking myself for weeks, and I'm still unsure. Well, I like her, if that matters. It did, more than she knew. I found Nadine sitting in her favorite spot on my rooftop deck. I handed her a glass of wine and sat beside her. "I love this place. It's so peaceful and relaxing. I could spend all my time here," Nadine said with a happy sigh. Listening to the waves on the shore and feeling the cool sea breeze brought me back to when Lana and I first discovered this place and how joyful we felt back then. As her health got worse, she still wanted to spend every moment here. I understood how much Lana loved our rooftop spot. Now Nadine felt the same way. That night, we enjoyed gentle moments together, kissed, talked, and laughed. I watched her fall asleep, just like I had done with Lana many times before. My thoughts were all mixed up. I didn't want to replace Lana. I was trying to move forward. But why did I feel this way? It felt like I was being untrue to her memory. I didn't get much sleep that night. My mind wouldn't let me relax. When Nadine woke up, I was right there beside her. "Did I drool or something?" she asked as she wiped her mouth. I didn't answer. I just smiled and gave her a soft kiss on the forehead. "You okay?" she asked. "Never better," I replied. "Are you ready for today?" Nadine asked at breakfast. I looked at her and nodded. I thought my choice would be easy, but I knew the next one would be much harder. After breakfast, we bought a 2-tone blue and gray motorcycle. I thought I got a fair deal, but in the end, the seller still made money, and I got what I wanted. Tina saw the back seat and smiled wide. I felt joyful. Later, the 3 of us took a ride of about 50 miles. For the first time in a long while, Tina sat behind me on the bike. Having her there felt great. When we took a break, Nadine came over to check out the bike. "So, are you having any regrets?" she asked. "None at all. It's everything I hoped for," I said while looking at her, but my mind was elsewhere. The week dragged on. No one passed away this time, but it didn't make things easier. Tina kept asking what was bothering me, and all I could say was that I had a lot on my mind, and I really did. Tina was focused on the hog ride happening this Saturday. She couldn't stop talking about riding on her dad's new motorcycle. She hoped everyone would be jealous. I took Friday off from work. After Tina left for school, I went to the cemetery with 2 yellow roses. It was calm there at that hour. The lawn crew was just starting and sprinklers were coming up. I had something important to do. I talked like I always did. I had so much to say, and she listened as she always had. I told her I would always love her and that Tina was growing into the woman we dreamed she would be. I felt emotional, but for the first time, tears didn't fall. We both understood I was moving on. I had heard about a tradition that felt right for the moment. I took a piece of coral from my pocket and placed it on her headstone. It was a sign that I was there for her and would never forget her. She had been my love, my wife, and a big part of my life. But that was changing. When Tina got home from school, she found me on the roof. She asked why I wasn't at work. The only reason I could give her was that I had an important task to do earlier and then wanted some time alone. "Dad, are you sure you're okay?" "I am now." Over the next 2 months, I got to know Nadine better. I wanted to see the real Nadine, not just the version she showed to others. We still spent time as a family, visiting both my and her parents' homes for gatherings. Nadine had an older brother and a younger sister who was engaged to someone I didn't think was right for her, but I kept that to myself. She had great parents who were just happy to see their daughter with someone who treated her kindly and made her smile again. Nadine started to feel more relaxed around us. She began wearing colorful sundresses and capri pants instead of her usual long pants. While she wasn't ready for a bathing suit yet, she even wore longer shorts now. The darker clothing of her past was slowly fading away. Her time of sadness seemed to be over. I was glad she felt she could trust us and show her true self. With each moment we shared, I saw her beauty grow even more. It was late November, and the air was getting cooler. A jacket was necessary for the morning rides. For a few weeks, Tina chose to skip the hog rallies, wanting to hang out with her friends instead of us. I knew it was no longer new to her. As for Nadine, she was now a permanent part of our lives. Lana's wedding rings had been buried with her, but my grandmother had given my mother hers before she passed away. Tommy was already married, and my sister Jenny had a ring that was very large. So, if I wanted them, the rings were mine. On Thursday night, I visited my parents' house like I had many times before, but this time felt different. I had a special request. "Mom, I'd like to take Grandma's rings home with me tonight. Steve, is there something you want to share?" "Maybe on Sunday, but not now." She went to her jewelry box, got the rings for me, and put them in my hand. "She's a wonderful girl. I'm sure you two will be very happy together," she said, and we shared a warm moment. On Friday night, Nadine brought over ribs for dinner. There was a great rib place on her side of town. They weren't as good as the ones I knew up north, but they came close. At the last moment, Tina asked to go to a movie with one of her friends and get pizza afterward. Her friend's parents were taking them, and there might have been other friends, but she didn't say for sure. After all, she was just 10.5. "Just the two of us tonight?" she asked, smiling brightly. "Are you ready for a fun dinner?" We spread a sheet on the living room floor for a picnic. We enjoyed our meal and even shared a bottle of wine, sipping straight from it. It felt like a special night. "I really love this barbecue sauce," I said, savoring my food. "Oh, do you?" she replied with a playful smile, joining in the fun. When we finished, the meal felt like a lovely memory. We decided to clean up by having a quick shower. After a short chat, Tina got home around 9. Nadine and I were on the couch watching TV, waiting for her. After a brief talk about her evening, she went to her room and we headed to ours, feeling happy to be together. By 11, the house was quiet except for a small sound I made at 2 a.m. "Steve, I love you," Nadine whispered when I opened my eyes the next morning. "I've loved you for a long time, and I think we should get married." I was fully awake now. "You're proposing to me?" I sat up, surprised this wasn't just a dream. "Well, since you're not proposing to me, I thought I should just say it. Steve, I want you to be my husband. I want to make that very clear." "What makes you think I wasn't going to ask you?" "Maybe I was planning to do it this weekend," I said. "Steve, if I waited for you, we'd be very old by now." "What if I was prepared all along?" "Okay, show me." I jumped out of bed, went to my dresser, opened the top drawer, and took out a small envelope. "I'm sorry there's no ring or box, but my feelings for you are real. Nadine, I love you. Will you marry me?" I opened her hand and tried to place my grandmother's ring on her finger. It didn't fit, but it was the thought that mattered. My grandmother had small fingers, so the ring would need resizing, but the stone was beautiful. Nadine looked surprised, smiled, and hugged me tightly. "So what do you say? Will you let me be your husband?" "Only if you promise to be my wife first." "That'll be the day." Years later, we would still playfully argue about who proposed first, and I would remind her that I had the rings. We spent Saturday together enjoying each other's company. We told Tina at breakfast, asking her to keep it a secret until we spoke to our families. She was curious about why we were waiting. "Honey, we want a little time to ourselves before everything gets busy." We all had breakfast on the roof, and after that, Nadine and I walked along the shore for about an hour. We talked and relaxed, and by midnight, we were tired but very happy. The next day, we had breakfast with her parents and lunch with mine. Neither family was surprised, but both were grateful that we had found each other. And then it all started. We began planning our wedding for late spring. We told both our families that we wanted a small, cozy wedding, but it turned out to be much bigger than we thought. Jenny and her family came, but I didn't expect all our friends from the Hog chapter to want to join us in the limo to the church and then celebrate at the reception. The event became a semi-formal gathering with some drinks available. The hotel where we held the reception welcomed many bikers who had trouble finding their bikes afterward. Nadine looked beautiful. She wore an off-white dress that reached her knees, and it fit her perfectly. Her hair was styled in a braid with flowers mixed in. Her smile brightened up the entire room. Somehow, Nadine and Tina found a smaller version of Nadine's dress that looked just right for Tina. Together, they looked like characters from a storybook. Watching them, I felt my heart fill with love and joy. For our honeymoon, we drove south to Key West in Nadine's Mustang instead of on our bikes. We wanted to be close the whole time, and the car was the best choice for our trip. We stopped for a night in Miami before heading to Key West. We had booked a nice but affordable bed and breakfast and spent 4 days exploring the Keys during the day and enjoying the stunning sunsets from the dock at night. Nadine surprised me with a few new outfits, though they didn't stay on for long as we enjoyed each other's company. We shared many thoughtful conversations during those days in Key West. We really made the most of our time together. On our way back, we stopped to rest, and I admired a beautiful motorcycle nearby. I was so lost in thought, looking at all its details, when the owner came over. "You want to buy it? I can give you a great price." I looked at Nadine. She didn't say anything. I've been there. Now I prefer what I have next to someone I really love. We climbed back into her Mustang and continued our trip, enjoying the lovely Florida weather and the happiness of being with someone I felt meant to be with. Given the tough economy, we decided to rent out Nadine's house while thinking about selling it later. Nadine had a lot of clothes and shoes. We even got 2 wardrobes to hold everything. I just hoped this wouldn't inspire Tina too much, or I might have to rent my brother's place next door to fit everything. I learned that I wasn't as ready to start a family as I thought. I never got Nadine pregnant even though we tried. 3 years later, Nadine's sister lost a close friend and her husband in a car accident. They had a 3-year-old son, and no one in the family could take care of him. We spent a lot of time talking about what to do with each other and with Tina. A few months later, after learning about Danny, we decided to adopt him and bring him into our family. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I doubted our choice. Still, over time, we came together as a family. We all understood what it meant to lose someone special, even if it didn't make things easier for Danny. At 13, Tina was a big help. She connected with Danny, and they both understood the hard times of losing someone. In time, Danny learned to trust and care for us. Fortunately, we had 2 bikes so we could ride together and enjoy the fresh air. Our vacations were fun and lively because we were all together. The first time I heard Danny talk about his feelings for Nadine, I felt a sense of happiness. It made everything feel right. I'm not saying it was always smooth, but we were proud of our marriage. I still visit Lana's grave from time to time. I like to share updates with her. It might seem a bit odd, but sometimes I bring pictures. Do I miss her? Yes, I think I always will, but I have a new love now, and I know Lana would want me to be happy. I tell Lana that one day I'll introduce her to Nadine, and I think they would be good friends. For now, I'm going to live my life the way she would have wanted. Even though it felt like I lost a part of myself when Lana passed, I am thankful to have met someone who brought joy back into my life. Hey, listeners, if you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.